result for SSC from 1988 till today, which speaks about the quality of education imparted to the students. From KG to PG, as a matter of principle, no donation is accepted for students. The remarkable feature of our college is Students' Consumer Cooperative Society, which is run for the students by the students, successfully functioning since 1993. It is really a practical laboratory for commerce students and sets a good example of learning by doing. We have fully automated library with e-zone section for students with a very good collection of books and journals. Our past student association and Mennonite 99 group of students organize a program Indian Army Our Pride and Raksha Bandhan with army officers every year and also provides placement facilities for our students. We give preference to girls' education as we believe that an educated woman educates the entire family. Laksh, an intercollegiate fest, has become a regular feature of our college. Under the guidance of our multifaceted chairman Sarada Madam, we all are marching towards perfection by organizing various activities. With this short introduction of our institution, I once again welcome you all for this today's function. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for this introduction of our college. This is an international forum in which we are organizing this seminar. So before we start the sessions, I would like to call Prashant to play a video on our college. Prashant sir?
যদি তোর ডাক শুনি কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনি কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনি কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনি কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি কেউ কথা না কয় ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা কেউ কথা না কয় যদি সবাই থাকে মুখ ফিরায় সবাই করে ভয় যদি সবাই থাকে মুখ ফিরায় সবাই করে ভয় তবে পরাণ খুলে ও তুই ফুটি তোর মনের কথা একলা বলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে
रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम।
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम् धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे।
Thank you, Prashant sir. And it is very true that our founder chairman sir is always there in all of our hearts. And with his blessings, we have come to this age or place where we are conducting this webinar. Now I would like to request Dr. Sunita KK to introduce our first and the inspiration and the strong strength of our college and the person behind organizing this webinar, our first resource person, Dr. Srimati Sarada Menon ma'am, to be introduced. Thank you. Over to you, Sunita ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Ruchi Tandon. I'm blessed and privileged to have been given this opportunity to introduce the most distinctive personality I have ever known. She's none other than Mrs. Sarada P. Menon, Chairman, Bhandup Educational Society. With my limited knowledge and ability, I may fall in my duties, but I will try to give a glimpse of this multitasker, multifaceted, and multi-talented personality. Srimati P. Sarada Menon is single-handedly performs the duties of an educational trust. It contains colleges and schools, and in a typical Gandhian way. When it comes to personal details, Madam is the chairman of Bhandup Educational Society and also the principal of P.A. Menon English High School. She's also the chairman, Center of Gandhian Studies and Action, and member of Indian Council of Gandhian Studies, New Delhi and Thiruvananthapuram. She's a continuous learner and has studied palmistry, numerology, Vastu Shastra, Feng Shui, graphology, physiognomy, and still continues practicing. And her consultation and advices are always available and accessible to people free of cost. Madam is the managing trustee of number of organizations involved in charity work. Madam also conducts counseling sessions for parents and students, and that too in a typical Gandhian way. Madam is a strong social activist. She conducts literacy awareness campaign and medical checkups of eye, dental, cardio, neuro, and diabetes. Organizes fund collection for NASIO, Indian Leprosy Foundation, and Tata Cancer Research Center every year. Madam has organized distribution of free calipers, Jaipur food, wheelchair, and other accessories for handicapped children. Madam is involved in free cataract operations and checkups in rural areas where Gandhiji always said, yes, it is the place where the soul of India lies. When it comes to awards and recognitions, it's a long list. I will showcase some of them. Madam was felicitated and honored by Mahatma Gandhi Peace Center, University of Mumbai in the year 2011 at the hands of the then Vice Chancellor, Dr. Rajan Velukar. Madam is the recipient of Rajastariya Shikshan Ratna Puraskar in the year 2010. Madam is also the recipient of Social Action Award from 2014-15 till 2019-20 from Indian Development Leprosy Foundation. Madam was felicitated by Prakash Wale, Superintendent of Post Office, Northeast Mumbai, with a set of postal stamps in her honor as a memento at the valedictory function of Gandhi Week on 12th October 2021. She was one among the 41 delegates to participate in a program Understanding Bhagavad Gita, a journey towards leadership excellence from 13 to 22nd December 2021, organized by Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. I just said a very few of her achievements and a very shady part of her personality. Many more things to be told. Many things have to be shown. But I'm sure the audience will understand from her own words. Madam, it's a privilege to invite you to give the first address in this international webinar on Gandhism, peace, and wool. Welcome, madam.
Namaste. Dr. Sunita has spoken a lot, but let us not take it in the face value. A lot needs to be done, that too without any expectations, which I have learned from our founder, my mentor. With his blessings, I begin. Principal Saroj Fadnis, the speakers of today's event, Dr. Alex Dam, Mr. Matt Mayer, Dr. Benedict Muthien, Dr. Avkash Jadhav, Dr. Vidya Jain, who is already associated with our institution for the past many years. Welcome, ma'am. Dr. Neeta Khandepkar, once again, our well-wisher, and Dr. Namita Nimbalkar. The principals of various colleges, teaching, non-teaching staff, the august audience, and my dear student friends. It's a privilege for all of us in V.K. Krishna Menon College to host an international seminar, or we can call it webinar, on the occasion of the martyrdom of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhiji. Gandhiji's death anniversary every year for us is a day of prayer, rededication, reflection, and reiteration of our commitment not only to the ideals, message, legacy of the father of the nation, but also to those who sacrifice their lives for us in order to ensure our freedom, honor, and equal opportunity in all respects. Our beloved founder, Advocate P.A. Menon ji, all through his life and more so in his public and private life, held Bhagavad Gita as a source of spiritual inspiration and guide, just as Swami Vivekananda treated this immortal classic of all times as a dictionary of life. Gandhiji considered Bhagavad Gita as his spiritual mother. Let us come to the topic of today's discussion. Today, ridiculing Gandhi's ideas have become fashionable. Non-violence, which is narrowly interpreted, has a very broad philosophy. It was not an instrument of the weak, but rather of the brave. To him, even nurturing evil ideas in the mind constituted violence. Gandhiji said, there is enough in this world to satisfy one's need, but not greed. Mahatma Gandhiji is a polarizing figure in many ways, with his share of admirers and critics. He has been labeled by his critics with various colorful metaphors like agent of capitalist, imperialist, Hindu communalist in disguise, agent of Muslims, etc. In the modern day world, nations are madly behind power, and there is violence and hatred all around us. Gandhian ideas have no relevance. To him, war cannot be a means to solve any dispute. Gandhi said, eye for an eye approach would make the whole world blind. Humanity has witnessed several wars and revolutions. It has also seen changes being effected through peaceful means. Gandhiji demonstrated the power of ahimsa, non-violence, as an alternative to war and violence. The Gandhian perspective of non-violent human transformation is slowly but steadily receiving attention in almost all parts of the world now. Many social activists, freedom fighters, human rights activists, political leaders have demonstrated that the non-violence as advocated by Gandhi needs a serious attention. Martin Luther King in USA acknowledged his indebtedness to Gandhi and said, "From my background, I gained regulating Christian ideals. From Gandhi, I learned my operational technique." He continued, "We will return good for evil." Christ showed us the way, and Gandhi showed us how it could work. E. Stanley Jones, himself a great pacifist, said, "I bow to Gandhi, but I kneel at the feet of Christ to give him my full and final allegiance." Let me conclude my presidential remarks by quoting Alvin Toffler, the celebrated author of Future Shock and the Third Wave, which makes a very interesting study of the various options available to humanity. He says there that at this moment, there are three options: the capitalist, the Marxian, and the Gandhian. While the capitalist model is built on exploitation, the Marxian model depends on violence, confrontation, and conflict. The Gandhian model is based on the desire to provide a better life. The non-violent model, which is creative and constructive, offers social justice and peace, the hallmark of sustainable development. And let us remember what Gandhi meant when he said, "Be the change you want to see in others." Bhagavad Gita eloquently testifies the validity of this assertion of Gandhiji. We at the Krishna Menon College and its allied institutions uphold through our committed efforts to keep in our mind the ever-inspiring wisdom of Gandhiji's teachings. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. As you have aptly observed, the world has seen enough of bloodsheds in the name of revolutions and wars, and the world has also seen that change can be effected in a peaceful way. Thank you, madam. That message was apt for the international webinar to begin with. Thank you. And now I request Dr. Kakali Lahiri to introduce the next speaker. Over to you, Kakali, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Sunita. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce the keynote speaker of the day, Dr. Avkash Jadhav. He is a gold medalist in BA in history and a PhD in the labor movement. Dr. Avkash Jadhav's scholarly work revolves around labor studies, religion and philosophy, human rights, ancient and modern Indian history, etc. He is a recipient of around 9 scholarships for his academic excellence. He was also awarded the prestigious Asiatic Society Fellowship to pursue study on Gandhian philosophy. He has participated in more than 180 international and national conferences, seminars and workshops, and is affiliated to many various academic bodies. He has around 30 publications to his credit. He has authored the book on history of Bombay, history of USA, history of modern Maharashtra, and he has authored a textbook on history which is used by Goa board for the 10th standard students. Dr. Avkash Jadhav was nominated as a municipal councillor in the BMC from 2012 to 2017 as a representative from the academic section. He was instrumental in getting the 103 square kilometer Sanjay Gandhi National Park as no plastic zone after a struggle of 11 years. He has guided more than 35 documentaries. He has received far more than 8 in national and international awards for his social work, human rights activities, environmental and heritage activism. He has been felicitated by the National Human Rights Center thrice for his work in human rights. In 2019, he was conferred upon with Karmavir Chakra by Rex Fellowship. He received Swami Vivekananda Puraskar from Ministry of Youth and Cultural Affairs in 2019. On the recommendation of Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Dr. Avkash Jadhav represented the country in the SAARC conference in Sri Lanka and Afghanistan in 2017 and 2019 respectively. He is a scientific director on the International Board of Global Knowledge, academic from Spain. He is on the editorial board of more than 5 international journals. He is also editor-in-chief of 2 international journals, International Journal of Emotions, Expressions and Dimensions, and also of International Journal of Concern, Complexities and Dialogue. Beside academic and professional life, he is an avid tracker, poet, and numismatics. He is an enthusiastic reader, and also he has written various street plays. His poems has received awards and are selected in various national and international anthologies. Currently, Dr. Avkash Jadhav is the head and associate professor of the Department of History at St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. The founder trustee of Kash Foundation, Mumbai, and also director of the Center of Academic and Professional Development, the allied academic body of Kash Foundation. Actually, there is a lot to speak about him, and I had a difficult time to select what to say. Today, he is going to deliver a speech on the topic Gandhi and environmental responsibilities. So when we have such an extraordinary personality among us, then why to wait? Let's all welcome Dr. Avnish Jadhav. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lahari, thank you for that judicious introduction. And my apologies that you have to read so long.
Yes, no
It
problem,
has
sir.
it
You
has
have lots
been
of feathers on your cap, sir.
it has been always a pleasure to come back to Menon College. I remember my association with the college when Sir was around, and I would always come on 30th of Jan. And during lunchtime, he would hold my hand and he would sit with me and he would talk and he would give his insights and we would have quite lengthy discussions. Uh, my honor to the principal of the college, the trustee, Dr. Sarada Menonji, my co-panelists, students, the colleagues, and dear participants. Before I begin, I have a small question, and I would expect uh, the answer in the chat box if you can give the answer. Okay. My first question to the students, for that matter, is how many of you have ever lied in your lifetime? That is, you refrained from speaking truth. You can just mention me, that's it, in the chat box. That you, if you ever lied in your lifetime. Okay. I have one response. Okay. I have response from other two students. Very good. Okay. Four, five, six, eight. Eight. Okay. We have 109 or 108 people. And out of 108, eight people have responded. So I would go with this fact that eight people are listening to this entire event. That is what I would go with, right? I have asked the question, how many of you have lied ever in your life so far? Okay, a good number. Now, how many of you, second small question, how many of you tried to speak the truth and you faced the difficulty? I would go with Dr. Sunita's last answer. Uh, yeah, how many of you spoke the truth and you faced the difficulty? You can just write, I faced. Just write, I faced. That you spoke the truth and you faced difficulties. I faced. Okay, okay, okay. Four, five, six, seven, eight, 9, 10, okay, 11, 12, last 10 seconds. Okay, okay. A good number of colleagues and students from FY BCom, BMS, FY, BAP also are responding. Gandhiji's opinion was that we are not born liars. Inherently, we are supposed to be speaking truth, but we adapt to the situations around us and we are programmed to lie in the absence of acceptance of truth. Because the truth is not accepted, the consequences sometimes are quite harsh, rude, equally difficult to sustain. And then we start having the disguise of lying. But he also mentions that ultimately, when you lie, it is not about you lying to the other person, it is about you lying to yourself. Finally, it is between you and God, it is not between you and people around, for that matter. The entire concept of Judgment Day, Gandhiji tried to simplify it in a very small manner, in a simple manner. I'm supposed to speak on Gandhiji's approach on environment, the sustainable development philosophy which he advocated very strongly. The first conference on environment by UN was held in Stockholm in 1972, Sweden. And that was the first time when countries across the globe came together to discuss about the challenges and issues of environment. Suddenly, the world was not a healthy place to live in. And UNEP was formed, United Nations Environment Programme was formed. From 1972 to all the way 2009, the summit on climate change, which was held at Copenhagen in Denmark. Perennially, what was discussed was how to overcome the issues of environmental degradation and how to sustain a healthy ecosystem. But while discussing, very often all the environmentalists would acknowledge the contribution and the far-sightedness of Gandhiji. It is actually an irony that we, the way Professor Sharda Menon was mentioning, that it is a trend, a fashion that we ridicule Gandhi. That makes us rather more popular than following Gandhi, because following Gandhi is definitely an above average task. It is not a task which a mediocre person can take, a task which, of course, not an average and below average person can take. Following Gandhi definitely requires more excellence than an average mind. So the global leaders, environmental leaders, throughout their meetings and conventions, they always acknowledge the efforts of Mahatma Gandhi, the way he highlighted the environmental issues right from 1909 onwards. They became the guiding light to the international leaders. Gandhi's simple formula of non-violence, where he said non-violence is the law that is operating our life. Because if we become violent, aggressive, we will jeopardize our own entire structure of existence. When Gandhiji spoke about development, he always placed holistic development before a progressive development. A holistic development is always inclusive, it is not exclusive. I'll give you a small example. Unlike many of you, even at your age, the students I'm talking about, student friends, I was not quite a keen follower of Gandhi. Can I ask the students here, how many of you genuinely, I'm sure your authorities will not pull up on you, genuinely feel I find it difficult to comprehend Gandhi. कि मुझे अभी भी लगता है गांधी फिलोसफी मेरे समझ में नहीं आ रही. How many of you feel so? I'm not saying you don't like Gandhi. I'm saying how many of you feel थोड़ा difficult है गांधी को comprehend करना. Can you answer? I find करके. Is it possible? That I find a bit difficult to comprehend Gandhi. Can you answer that in the chat box? And I request authorities not to pull up the people who say this. I used to find it quite difficult and difficult to comprehend Gandhi's philosophy. So anyone from the group who would, because Gandhiji's truth was rather more dynamic a process than he himself. Anyone? Unlike at your age, even I used to find it quite difficult to comprehend Gandhi. Of course, it was quite naive on my part because I always felt Bhagat Singh was more appealing than Gandhi. At the age of 18 to 22, we always feel that Bhagat Singh is definitely a much more challenging role model than Gandhi. But when we look at the entire concept of sustaining, when we look at the concept of a collective growth, minimum harm for that matter, Bhagat Singh is, of course, powerful in his own ways, definitely powerful. But when we look at a sustainable development, of course, Gandhi overshines in all the possible ways. So I remember this small incident when I'm talking about inclusive. I have one person who has said, very good, not to comprehend, but it is difficult to follow and adapt. Yes, I like your honesty. When we say inclusive development in Mumbai, recently we had this entire issue on RA, the deforestation. A metro car shade was supposed to come up in RA. I'm sure many of you must have checked this part. Yeah? How many of you know about this entire metro car shade and they were supposed to uh, take over hectares of land at Goregaon RA? I'm sure most of you know about this. Yeah? Can I just get 2 yes in the chat box? That would keep you awake. Okay. RA has 27 Adivasi Padas. From 2016 onwards, I have been associated with this entire RA movement. The 27 Adivasi Padas. These people struggled till 2015 for light, electricity, for basic health centers. Communication and transport was definitely a nightmare. During night time, they hardly had lampposts. And suddenly this development in fact came in there that we will be taking hectares of land to develop a metro car shed when there was option available at Kanjurmarg, also at BKC. The government came down heavily this that we want to have. It was not just a metro car shed, it was also then eventually to have RTO building and SRA project. But what are you doing? You're killing the lungs of Mumbai city. 1180 hectares of forest land in the city is definitely a magnificent contribution. You are taking away the supply of oxygen for that matter. And at what cost? At the cost of development. Whose development? Development of few people. Now, few activists of the city got together. They approached the government. Series of meetings were held. Along with the members of this Adivasi Padas, there was an open hearing at MMRDA which was conducted. And it was proposed that can we look out for an alternate space? because you cannot touch an ecosystem which is there since generations together. But the government was quite adamant. They managed to get court orders to axe the trees around 4:35. This was 2nd October or so. And at midnight, along with a huge force, police force, bandobast, they started axing the trees. The Adivasis of that entire premises, they assembled, they engaged in a Chipko Andolan, where they went and embraced the tree. They were lathi charged. All the entry points to RA were shut down. Some of us managed to enter that zone around 9:30, 10 at midnight. We were detained there, and we really had a question. And this question was really a pertinent question. That yes, development is required, yes, metro is required. But how can you replace the ecosystem? You need to fight for it. It is not for you, it is for the generations. Because your environment is also an heritage. Gandhi had proposed a very interesting philosophy, the philosophy of Sarada, in which he had cited that the principles of well-being of all the human beings should be considered. I quote, according to him, it was to see the universal and all prevailing spirit of truth face to face. One must be able to love the meanest creation of oneself. That is, you need to respect the entity around you. You cannot work in isolation in a monolithic manner, for that matter. And he very strongly advocated that part. For him, the base of India was not urban India. For him, the base of India was the India in the rural parts, the village industries, the cottage industries, for that matter. For him, the sustainability, in fact, lies at the village. In 1938, when the then president of US, FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, announced that I want to see each American to possess two radios and two cars. That is the symbol of growth. That is the symbol of development. And when Gandhiji was asked about this statement, that what if the Indians also go in for this mad rush and mad race of having cars? Gandhiji mentioned at that point of time that I would not advise it as a meritorious thing because India cannot afford to have so many cars because it will be difficult for us to walk on the roads. It will lead to space crunch and eventually it will lead to air pollution for that matter. Now, here you have a person who almost 60, 70 years prior to this kind of a development could think, could anticipate, and he gave his insights then. In fact, he was the first man to introduce the concept of service to nature in order to enrich nature. If you read Gandhiji's articles in Indian Opinion, in Harijan for that matter, you'll always see him emphasizing not about fundamental rights. He always emphasized on fundamental duties. What is that you can give and you can contribute? It is not what you can derive out for that matter. His interesting article in Hind Swaraj in 1909, in fact, highlighted about the issues of urbanization. And he said urbanization will eventually lead to environmental destruction. Environmental destruction in the form where it will be difficult for us to repair it. Damage control definitely will be a big challenge for that matter. According to Gandhiji, the concept of Swaraj or self rule basically is to enable a sustainable development that can be implemented without compromising the quality of life. Once Gandhiji was asked, what is your inspiration? Where do you get motivated? Because people get influenced by you, you motivate people. Where do you get motivated from? To which he replied, I need no inspiration other than nature's. She has never failed me as yet. She mystifies me, bewilders me, and sends me to ecstasies. Nature in its pure form, for that matter. Nature at its best. But Gandhiji, when he was advocating our services towards nature, he could also foresee the upcoming issues which India, agrarian India, definitely would face. You would equally find it interesting that imagine back in 1947, in one of his prayer meetings in Delhi, Gandhiji advocated or introduced or initiated the concept of rainwater harvesting. When he stated that we need to start rainwater harvesting, which can be used for the irrigational purposes. And look at the beauty of this. M.S. Swaminathan, a very well-known journalist, he was deputed to understand the agrarian challenges in India. And in his commission report, MS Swaminathan Commission report in 2006, you find MS Swaminathan also strongly recommended rainwater harvesting. To give you one more small example, Germany had initiated the Green Party movement as such. And the founders of the Green Party movement, in fact, owed their existence or their survival to Gandhian philosophies and Gandhian ideas. Miss Petra Kelly, one of the founding members of Green Party, in fact, elaborated. She said, we need to respect the raw materials which we derive from other countries as well as from within. Excessive use of the raw materials, even if they are available in abundance, is also an act of violence. Because when you waste the raw materials, you are depriving a section of society of the resources of survival, for that matter. And eventually, Gandhiji did mention this that in the long run, the world will fight not for territorial gains, but for resources. And today, we are really struggling to have good source of water supply. We are really struggling, for that matter, to get good food, unadulterated food, for that matter. On 9th April 2007, Time magazine came up with its own guideline, for that matter. 51 Global Warming Survival Guides. That's what it was called on 9th April 2007. 51 Global Warming Survival Guides. In that, they earnestly suggested share more, consume less, simplify life. This is nothing else but inspiration from Gandhi. I will share a small anecdote with you all and I will come to my closure. I teach history in St. Xavier's College. It's been now more than 25 years. Unlike your other teachers, even I take my students very often for field trips. We have a paper called Environmental Studies, EVS. Unfortunately, we have killed the paper by making it theoretical. I always have my conflicts with my colleagues that there should be no examination for this paper. Let each student plant a sapling, and end of the year, you measure the survival of the sapling and give scores to the child if at all the scores are mandatory. Anyway, in 1999, I took my students to Kanadi caves. These are 2,000-year-old Buddhist caves at Borivali, Sanjay Gandhi National Park. I took my students, a bunch of almost 80, 90 students, and they were also carrying their food packets and everything. So we went around. To my dismay, I saw the entire premises littered, thoroughly littered, with beer bottles, water bottles, plastic bags, and wrappers and everything. These are 2,000-year-old Buddhist caves. What do you think I must have done when I saw all that around? What do you think I must have done? Can you answer in the chat box quickly? What do you think I must have done when I saw this around? If you can just type quickly. When I saw all this around, what do you think I must have done? Mrs. Anupama Prasad is saying, started picking. Okay. Anyone else? So there is only one person listening to me? No. Dr. Tandon also start cleaning and told students also, okay, I can have two more answers quickly. Devika is saying, you must have motivated others by setting an example. And last, one more. Okay. Professor Shazamani started gathering the reins. No, I did not do any of this. I did not do this. 1999. I did not do any of this. I walked back, but those things haunted me. A month later, along with a team of students and trash bags, we went again. And this time, I started picking. And then the students asked me, Sir, do you have spare trash bags? I said, Of course I have. I gave it to them with gloves and trash bags. It has been continuous pre-lockdown, I'm talking about, till 2019. It has been a continuous efforts of 19 years of on-field learning environment. Every year, 4 times at least, we would go and we would clean this entire premises. We would come back with nothing less than sometimes 150 trash bags, 200 trash bags, and we would clean the area. These were the students. They would begin with me, and after some time, they would excel me also. And there would be a competition. And they would go down to all the entire area and they would collect this. And when I end of the entire exercise, I would sit with them and I would talk to them. You know, one of the beautiful answer I got was, Sir, it was so fulfilling. This is a real learning, sir. And I feel I am returning back gratitude to the trees who supply us oxygen by cleaning this area. It took me 11 years to convince the authorities at National Park that kindly declare National Park as a no plastic zone. It is a forest, it is not a park. Don't allow people to carry plastic bottles and wrappers and bags. And after 11 years of struggle, they did agree. But again, as you know, things don't come so easy. They said, Jadhav sir, आपने बोला it is no plastic zone, लेकिन अभी हमारे पास प्लास्टिक का रिप्लेसमेंट नहीं है. गेट पे चेक कौन करेगा? We don't have staff. I said, you earn 3.5 crore annually only as entry fee. नाही नाही वो ते आम्हाला माहित नाही आमच्याकडे स्टाफ नाही. 6 months from my pocket, I bought paper bags and we would go and volunteer there, request people to hand over their plastic stuff, and we would give them these paper bags. Shockingly, the ones who would come in cars were much harder snobs than the ones who would walk and come to the park. From the cars, they would give us such dirty looks to my student volunteers to us, as if like we are asking them one of their organ. But the ones who would walk to the park, they were very cooperative. Attitude, is not about a class basically. Attitude is because how you look at it. We started making a monster of plastic there. And this was, I think, a better example of working towards environment than being really quite preachy in the classroom. We are waiting for the lockdown to subside. Eventually, of course, we would again have our field trip there and we'll carry on the same work. Today, interestingly, the authorities have they have made a chowki there where now your cars are checked. You're encouraged not to carry plastic inside. I saw a dead deer with 8 kg of plastic in its stomach. Imagine. We have spoiled the habits of the monkeys in the area. Now they prefer eating Lays. You give them a bottle of Coke, they know how to open it, for that matter. We have spoiled this entire thing around us. So we need to take charge. And I never believe you are the future of the country and all. I never say this to youngsters. I say I am the future because my present is my future. If I don't work on my present, I don't have a bright future. So I always have this appeal, you and I, the younger generation or the older generation, anyone today, our task begins today, not tomorrow and the future generation. It is today. Does that matter? And I do it for the generation next because I have got this from the generation before me. People like Menon sir, who have definitely struggled to give us some of the good heritage, some of the eco heritage. It is our responsibility that we also pass on the same heritage in status quo format to the next generation. That matter. Lastly, I congratulate the Institute for consistently upholding the values of Gandhiji and his philosophy, where I don't see many events happening like this across, you know, in such a consistent manner. So my association with the Institute has been more than a decade, and I find that every time I meet them, the jest, the enthusiasm is the same, as contagious as always. The staff, the students, it is as good as what I had witnessed it in 2008, 2009. It is the same. So my good wishes to uh, you, and thank you for inviting me over here, Honorable Principal. Thank you for you know giving me this opportunity, and Professor Sharda Menonji, my greetings to you for taking up this task. The way your father really wanted you to take it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And now the session is open for questioners. If anybody, sir is with us now, so if any one of the participant is eager to ask some questions regarding environment, regarding Gandhian philosophy, I think we have the right person among us to answer to your doubts. So if you have any question, I think sir is eagerly waiting to answer it. I think, sir, you have put all of us into a deep thoughts, I think. Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. You spoke wonderfully with simple language for everyone to understand. I think from school children to for all, I think it is a very simple language you explain. Actually, when you started with RA colony incident, I was thinking, how will you connect Gandhian philosophy with the RA colony incident? Then I was really amazed to hear the connection that you have done with Gandhiji's philosophy with the environment. It was really commendable. The way you have explained, it was very nicely you have explained the points that you stressed on, the philosophy of Sarvodaya, and you have explained nicely how Gandhiji has stressed on the fundamental duties and not on the fundamental rights. His visualization about the urban India and the problems we are facing it now. He has visualized it long back, and those problems we are facing it now. So your speech have touched our heart, sir, and made us very more sensitive to the environment. It has made us to think that how can we use Gandhian philosophy and create a sustainable environment. I think like we all have started thinking like how can I contribute and do something to create a sustainable environment. Thank you once again, sir, for evoking such a thought in our mind. Thank you very much, sir. And now I request Dr. Ruchi to introduce the next speaker of the day, Dr. Vidya Jain. Over to Ruchi.
Thank you, Kakali ma'am. It is my privilege to introduce our next eminent speaker who is with us. Dr. Vidya Jain is a professor of political science and served in the University of Rajasthan for 38 years. She was principal of Maharani's College, Jaipur, which is Asia's biggest girls' college. She was a director, Center for Gandhian Studies in the University of Rajasthan. Recently, she is elected as convener of Non-Violence Commission of IPRA. She was a secretary general in 2012 to 2014 of Asia Pacific Peace Research Association, APPRA, APRA. She is also a member of Board of Directors of IPRA Foundation. Vidya Jain is a well-known scholar of Gandhian peace and gender studies. She has authored 7 books and innumerable articles in journals of national and international repute. She is also in the editorial board of several journals like Journal of Human Security Studies, USA. She is a member of Non-Killing Political Science Committee of the Center of Non-Killing Hawaii, USA. And also, she is a member in Research Committee of IPRA. She has always been in the selection committees of different universities and public service commissions, and associated with ICSSR, UGC, Gandhi Samiti, etc. Her books, Peace, Nonviolence and Gandhian Concerns, were released in APPRA conference in Kyoto 2011. New Paradigms of Peace Research, Asia Pacific Context, another book, in IPRA conference, Stu City 2012, which is translated in Chinese language as well. In 2018, her book, Connecting Contemporary African Asian Peacemaking and Nonviolence from Satyagraha to Ujama, is published from Cambridge Scholars Publishing. She is a social activist and has widely traveled to all the continents of the world and different parts of India, and worked for youth awareness, women empowerment, and welfare of the deprived section. She is actively involved in spreading Gandhian ideas and practices throughout the globe. We are privileged to have such a true Gandhian and eminent speaker with us today. So without any further delay, I invite ma'am for her talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ruchi. And Ruchi has been, student of my college. She hails from Jaipur. It was an additional pleasure. Honorable Sarada P. Menon, I really have deep respect for you just because you are, daughter of such a renowned Gandhian P. Menon Saab. And when I visited your college, Bhandup College, and I'm so fortunate to visit, and maybe next time me and Benedict, Muthien and Matt Mayer can again come to your college physically, when the pandemic allows us. I mean, I saw the respect for Menon Saab. And as I always tell my students that there is always a Gandhi of a village. Every village has its own Gandhi. There is a Gandhi in ourselves also. So maybe Menon Saab is Gandhi of Bhandup. I mean, it's so much respected. So I bow my head in the honor of Shri Menon Saab. I'm Principal Saroj Fadnis Saab. I'm happy to be with Matt Mayer, who is IPRA Secretary General, Bernedette, Muthien, who is a good friend of mine, who is from South Africa, Avkash ji, and I was so wonderful to hear him. So let me say, and let me very emphatically and categorically say that Gandhi is as relevant today as he was never before, because of the fundamental problems from which the humanity is struggling, the problems of violence, the problem of environmental degradation, problem of increasing rift of and gap of rich and poor, atrocities against women, against Dalits, against Mother Nature. They have all brought Gandhi into center stage. The intellectuals of the world are giving a serious thought to this third model of sustainable development and appropriate technology, because they feel that this model has answers to these basic fundamental questions. And more because the two prominent models have failed tremendously. The first, liberal capitalist model, because of globalization, the contradictions of liberalism have come on surface. They're all saying that they are going to serve people, have proved wrong. And the Marxist-Leninist model have automatically, because of China adopting the path of open economy, and after Russia's disintegration, it has also failed. So here is a third model who wants to say something, who has answers to these basic questions today. And when people say that Gandhi relevant, is Gandhi revalidated? Because I have the opportunity to connect to several international organizations and travel, and I feel so pleasantly surprised that people and intellectuals all around the world are giving us serious thought, because they accept Gandhi, if not as a thinker, as a political strategist, because Gandhi is relevant. Because firstly, I would just put few points and I'll come to the basic theme of my lecture. Gandhi is relevant because Gandhi has taught me to stand up against any discrimination. Gandhi tells me, don't tolerate any exploitation. He is the one who tells me that you just come up, mobilize, articulate, make organization, and that is Satyagraha. So Gandhi has given the world this magical tool of Satyagraha, which, and all over the world, people are accepting Gandhi as a political strategist, as an inventor of this Satyagraha technique. There are thousands of civil society movements all over the world, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, America, everywhere. Civil society movements, people's movements, anti-radiation movements, anti-apartheid movements, women organizations, environmental issues, water conservation. People are mobilizing and building, an organized movement which is on the Satyagraha technique. So Gandhian technique of Satyagraha has really made Gandhi very, very popular. Gandhi is the one who says that I should not tolerate. If I tolerate exploitation, I am part of this exploitative party. Secondly, Gandhi is relevant because pluralism is relevant. Gandhi tells me that we should respect this pluralism. We are plural. We are different. We live differently. We think differently. We walk differently. Because on the other hand, the globalization is actually making us homogeneous. They are, on the name of globalization, they are imposing the Western culture on us and teaching us what to eat, what to wear, to speak English language, and what not and what not. So, but here is Gandhi who says no, pluralism, this localism is very, very important, and we should respect this plural entity of ourselves. Gandhi is relevant because dialogue is relevant. Gandhi was a dialogistic philosopher. He was not a monologistic philosopher. If you see his Hind Swaraj, Gandhi, there are two, there are two actors, the editor and the reader, and they talk to each other. So Gandhi believes in dialogue. And see what's happening nowadays. There is no dialogue. We are just monologistic. We just say our thing and we do not open to listen to anyone. So till dialogue is relevant, Gandhi is relevant. Gandhi is relevant because inclusiveness is relevant. Gandhi is the one who always say, think of the last man sitting in the development syndrome. You have to take him into consideration if you are talking of development. So this inclusive economy, inclusive polity, thinking of this Daridra Narayan, Gandhi says, I give you a talisman. If your policies and your programs can really wipe off the tears in the last man sitting in the hut, then your policy is of any meaning. So this inclusiveness is, Gandhi is relevant because tolerance is relevant. We are really very, very, we have to be very, very tolerant. But nowadays, there is too much of intolerance. There is a divide on the name of caste, class, creed, religion, region, gender, and whatnot. And this is going to be, we are already a divided world. But if tolerance is important, if we have to listen to each other and be tolerant to each other, Gandhian discourse would always come into center stage. Gandhi is relevant because compromise is relevant. This is a big thing, Gandhi was in favor of compromise. Gandhi says himself, if I say two two opinions which are, antithetic to each other, you please go by my second opinion, because I've changed my opinion. I've changed my stand on the basis of my experience, on the basis of my experiment. So here is a man who is very, very progressive, open to change, open to evolve, open to grow. And that is why Gandhi always said, I don't have any ism. I don't have any, my life is only my message. And nowadays we are so adamant, we do not, we just say, why should I change my stand? Why should I compromise? But Gandhi was in favor of, compromise, because especially governments have to become responsive to the voices of people, what people are asking, whether it was, when I was happy when Modi government took away the Kisan laws, because they had to finally listen to this people's voice. Because if you have to change even your policies for the benefit of people, you should listen to that. So Gandhi was, and that is why Gandhi's, autobiography name is My Experiments with Truth. This man is almost every time experimenting, learning, growing. He's a great learner. Even on the day of his assassination, he was learning Bangla language. So he was a constant learner. And we are so stubborn, we are so strict, we do not want to change, we do not want to listen, we do not want to say. So Gandhi is relevant because communal harmony is relevant. Gandhi, as if you read Gandhi's autobiography, Gandhi just doesn't differentiate between Hindu, Muslim, men, women, rich, poor. He doesn't differentiate between individual, society, nature, and God. If you read autobiography, I have read it several times. Gandhi constantly travels and transcends between individual, society, nature, and God. Sometimes he would be talking about mass movements, national movement, organizing Kisans and Mazdoors and women, bringing them into political struggles. And at the other place, he will talk about moksha, God, religion, dharma. So he continuously travels between individual, nature, and God. So this is a continuous unity, So I always feel that Gandhi is the philosopher par excellence of unity, of integration. He doesn't differentiate even between nature, society, individual, and God. So I feel that this communal coherence is very, very important, because in recent India there is a lot of problems on the issue of, most of the problems are on the issue of religion, caste, and creed, and we have to understand that this is not going to prevail for longer time. Gandhi is relevant because we have given acceptance to the 7 sins which Gandhi said. You must have heard about those 7 sins, Gandhi says, politics without principles. And what kind of a politics are we having? There are no principles at all. Religion without sacrifice, science without humanity, knowledge without character, pleasure without conscience, and wealth without work. These are the 7 sins, and our society has given acceptability to these. People who do not work, they are the wealthier people all over. So till this is not challenged, Gandhi would be relevant. Gandhi is relevant because his symbols are very, very relevant. His symbol of, whether it is topi or jharu or charkha for that matter, a small spinning wheel. Gandhi was not going to, clothe the whole nation. Charkha is symbol of self-autonomy, dignity, self-sustenance, of Swadeshi, self-empowerment, and sovereignty. So, and Gandhi's, keeping in silence, or for that matter, upvas, is symbol of upvas, sitting on hunger strike, or keeping silent. These all, Gandhi brought these traditional idioms, these traditional symbols of religion to political purposes. He was a smart man. He combined traditions with modernity. Think of ahimsa. Ahimsa is always in my heart. Everybody is non-violent by nature. We want to be non-violent, Ahimsa is in our religion. But Gandhi brought it out of our heart, out of religion to political sphere. He made it a tool and technique to be used in political struggle. That was the beauty of Gandhi. So Gandhi really used these symbols, these traditions, these myths for political purposes. Gandhi is relevant because, and as I actually titled my topic of my title is Making Gandhi, talking of Gandhi in this post-COVID era. Gandhi is relevant because the way we are teaching, we are thinking and addressing our mother nature. I'm happy that my previous speaker have already spoken on this, because friends, I believe that this pandemic, because I want to speak on this post-COVID manifesto of Gandhian sustainable model of development. So this pandemic, I believe, is not an outcome. It is outcome of human misconduct. It is not God-given. It is not natural. It has not automatically come to us. This is entirely result of human misconduct. This is anthropocentric. This is caused by human beings. In last 50 years, 300 new pathogens have emerged. 70% of the human pathogens, HIVs, Ebola, influenza, MERS, and SARS, emerged when forests and ecosystems were evaded. When animals are crushed in factory farms for profit maximization, when there is a lot of non-vegetarianism, when we started killing and eating all kinds of wild animals, this coronavirus spread began. So human greed with no respect for others is the root cause of this pandemic and many more to follow. Believe me, this is not the last pandemic. There would be many, many more pandemics like this, because this earth it belongs to everyone. Just because you are born as a human being, you do not have the right to encroach other species spaces. And what you are doing, you are taking the share of their water, their land, their sunshine. You are putting animals into prisons. You are cutting them, crushing them, eating them, and doing whatever you want to do. And that is why, at one place Dalai Lama has written that he says to human beings that human beings are the wisest, the most intelligent children of Mother Nature. Dalai Lama says, behave yourself. Please think what you are doing. Otherwise, Mother Nature can even decide to live without human beings, because Mother Nature has more wonderful, beautiful eco life to serve at and to look at. So this is very, very important. And that is why when I say, we have to understand this, what kind of thought we are giving, and this whole concept of Gandhian harmony, now it comes into the first thought on which I want to speak, and my previous speaker has already touched this, that, this harmony. Gandhi is the biggest champion of the harmony. I'm reminded of one liner of Gandhi, which is very near to my heart, and I always use it. Gandhi says, I am, therefore you are, and you are, therefore I am. We peacefully coexist. We are not individual beings. We are interbeings. We are world beings. We are sons and daughters of one God. So, and I am only a nuclei in this whole ocean. I am very important. I am the nuclei. I am the focal point. But I am important until and unless I behave in the coherence of this whole. I have to respect this whole, the totality, this coherent whole. So this mutualness and this mutuality, this peaceful coexistence is not among human beings. Birds, animals, rivers, lakes, mountains, we all exist. We all exist together. We need each other. So we have to understand that we do not, just because you are born as a human being, you do not have the right to encroach other species spaces. And that is why Gandhi used to call Mother Nature. He never called it Earth. It is our mother. And what is my behavior towards my mother? And that is why I always say Gandhi is the first environmentalist. Gandhi talks of this taking care of Mother Nature's resources, which are limited, which are unrenewable. You have to think that this mother is not given to you by your ancestors or your fathers. It is a debt of your children. It belongs to the future generation. Think, what are you going to give to your children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren? No water, no resources. You will eat everything, you will waste all water and go away from this earth. How they will survive? So your model of development should be futuristic. It should look up to your children what and how they are going to survive. And that is why Gandhi says minimization of need. Because Gandhi was a true Baniya, he knew this, that we have to smartly use these limited resources. Gandhi says at one place that if you will waste like this, you need 2, 3, 4 earths. Do you have guts to create more earth? If okay, then you create more earth and waste like this. Otherwise, you have to use these resources very smartly. Gandhi used to have one vessel of water in the morning, for his brushing his teeth and washing his. Once when he was talking to Nehru, his whole water was wasted. And Gandhi became very sad, and Gandhi was an emotional and impulsive personality. Nehru said, what happened, Bapu? Why are you so sad? Gandhi said, you wasted my, whole water. Nehru says, so what? You take more from Sabarmati, which is just running behind. Gandhi says, Sabarmati belongs to the whole nation. It is not only mine. When I use my share of resources, when I use natural resources like this is the only answer to this environmental thought. Gandhi used to wear 2 clothes and then he came to 1 cloth. That dhoti also, when it became old, he would make a bed sheet of it. Then he will make a curtain of it. When the curtain was torn, he will make a mopping cloth with it. Even when the mopping cloth will be torn, he will make a diye ka bati with this. See the smartest use of resources which are limited, So this is very, very important. That is why, when Gandhi says nature has enough to fulfill everybody's need, but it has very little to fulfill anybody's greed. As mother, mother can just, उसके 5-7 कितने भी बच्चे हो, she can just rear them up with limited resources. However, the story is that the 6-7 children nowadays are not able to take care of their own parents. That is another story. But Mother Nature can take care of all its children, but we have to behave in a manner as we behave with our mother. But we are doing atrocities. We are ruining our Mother Nature. We are ruining this oneness, beautiful cosmos. We are just disturbing it. And in the COVID times, when we were aware, you see the beautiful birds are coming, the elephants are coming on the street, and this became one place to live. Gandhi, so this peaceful coexistence and living in harmony with each other, which was the first thought of when I thought I will be talking about living in harmony. We have forgotten to live in harmony with each other. Even in the families, we have forgotten how to live with husband, wife, and children. We have become so solitary, so egoist. We don't want to listen to anyone. But Gandhi says living in harmony with yourself, with your family, community, village, and nature by at large is the only answer to live and lead a beautiful and happy life. Gandhi believes in freedom as well. Gandhi is the biggest champion. Gandhi says, I will content to die if I am unfree. So Gandhi is biggest champion of this sovereign individual. Individual, because Gandhi lies all his solution in individual. Gandhi believes in the potential and capacity and capability of this individual. So a fearless, a self-conscious, sovereign, independent individual Gandhi creates. Gandhi says, no, systemic changes cannot do anything. I can give you 100 of examples, whether it is Lokpal bill, until unless you have a proper Lokayuk, nothing can happen. Whether there are gender laws, we have beautiful and most revolutionary laws for women, but nothing is happening because we are not focusing on designing a new man, a new women, a new individual, a new citizen. So until and unless you create a new man, a new women, nothing can happen. Be the change, as Sarada ji said, we want to see in others. Pratham Purush Ek Vachan Tusse hi shuruaat hai. The focus, the emphasis has to be on this man, this individual. That is why Gandhi creates a moral man who is a satyagrahi, who has the satya, hinsa, chaitya, aparigraha, non-violence, all kind of values with him. So this self-empowered, enlightened individual who believes in Swadeshi, Swadeshi is again a very, very good thought for this environmental, because Gandhian Swadeshi is not anti-Videshi. Gandhi Swadeshi is anti-Opniveshi. Whatever colonized me, I oppose it. Gandhi was not anti-foreign. I mean, a man who goes to England to study, who works in South Africa, who reads all the foreign literature of Ruskin, Thoreau, Tolstoy, he can never be anti-foreign, but he opposes whatever colonized me. So स्वदेशी विदेशी का विरोधी नहीं है, औपनिवेशी का विरोधी है. जो मुझे गुलाम बनाएगा उसका मैं विरोध करता हूँ. And that is why Gandhian Swadeshi is think globally but act locally. That is globalism. आपकी your eyes on the sky but your feet deeply rooted in your roots are deep, you know. So that is why Gandhi says keep the doors and windows open so that the fresh air can come in, fresh thoughts can come in, but be aware that you are not swept off your feet. ऐसी हवा ना आ जाए कि आंधी और तूफान बनकर आप ही खो जाएं. So don't be so globalized. Don't globalize at the cost of local. I have my own identity. So, you know, so I have to believe in my local resources, local talents, local technology. That is appropriate technology. So sustainable development, appropriate technology, they all go hand in hand. I mean, we have a place here just near Jaipur, Alwar, which you must be knowing. And there is, you know, Rajendra Singh is Waterman, Magsaysay winner. The people are working there. They are beautiful. When I go to Alwar, I think it is Uttarakhand, I think, because they have made water bodies by the local Gaam ka people, you know, Ramu Kaka and Haider Ali and all that. They don't need Oxford or Harvard ka expert. They can do it itself. So we have the talent, we have the technology, we have to use it, we have the resources. So now COVID has taught us. So grow your own food, cook your own food, develop your own education system, develop your own health system. This is Swadeshi, this is localism. Eat whatever is grown in near vicinity. I mean, in Rajasthan, why do I want cashew nut tree? It is not possible. I have to grow what I can have here. So this is you know, localism the people are talking about. Matrabhasha, which is again very, very important, because if you cottage industry, small technology. Gandhi was not against machines. He was against big machines. He was in favor of small machines, because with small machines he could give employment to all hands. और आज आप देखिए after globalization, कुम्हार, बढ़ाई, मोची, दर्जी, नाई सब गायब हो गए हैं. I mean, Pansari, if after Reliance Retail there is no Pansari in my colony. So what are we doing and where are we going? So there has to be a balance between development and human values, technology and culture. Japan is a beautiful example of that. They are technologically very, very advancing, but they know how to conserve and protect their family values. They have a joint family system. They have a long life. They don't allow English language to populate, the English media to populate, and whole kind of obscene things there. So you have to protect this. And one more thought which I want to, because that is again my favorite subject. I don't know. I'm not keeping track. You know, Ruchi, you can just say if my time is up. You know. So the one more thought about which I really want to talk is Gandhian thought of women. You are a women's college, and earlier when I met Sarada ji, there was a presentation that your college is fully run. Even the security guard is a woman. All principals, vice principals, office, all are women. I was so happy to hear that it's a purely, you know, women's college. And Gandhi's thought on women are very, very revolutionary. And we need them, especially in recent India, when we are very, very, very badly treating women, you know. I mean, I feel very unhappy being a woman, a mother-in-law, ex-principal of a girls' college, how girls are unsafe. They are unsafe everywhere, from womb to tomb. I am not even safe in the womb of my own mother, because there is female feticide. And to the rapes happening for against, I mean, sexual violence and all. So Gandhi creates a very, very powerful woman. Ruchi, you would be interested to, I mean, sometime if you call me to speak on this, Gandhi really designs a new woman. Gandhi visualizes a woman who is as powerful as Kali and Durga. Gandhi says women has compassion and love, and she's incarnation of ahimsa, but she's as powerful and firm as Kali and Durga. Gandhi gives, but I'll just end up with by this. This is my. I think I won't take much time. So Gandhi gives example from Mahabharata, when Draupadi gives, when her Chiraharan is happening, she calls upon God Krishna. And Krishna is not a physical God. Krishna is the voice of inner conscience, resolute will, my firm determination, saying I have all the power and strength to protect my own self. Every woman has that, to protect her own chastity, her own image and everything. So Gandhi visualized such. I mean, who is the woman? Women is mother of man. And when she's mother of man, she forgets the pain involved in the joy of creation. Let her transfer this love, this joy to the whole of humanity, and let her forget that she can ever be object of man's lust. So this kind of Gandhi, and I'm quoting Gandhi, Gandhi says, rise above your sexuality and work as friends and colleagues for the wider interests of the society. We are not men, women. We are individuals. We are citizens. Gandhi gives a beautiful, again for Ruchi, for you, I dedicate this definition to you. Gandhi says, who is this beautiful woman? Beautiful woman is not one which market teaches, to have soft hair and kajrare nayan. No, beautiful woman is one in whose heart God resides, whose conduct is ethical and moral, who inspires man for satyagraha. This is the concept of beauty. Think of the concept of beauty which this market is giving, because when I was in Maharani College, all girls were eating very, very less. Everybody wanted to become Alia Bhatt and Anushka Sharma. The role model was not Sharda Menon. The role model was altogether different, and that really, really, really bothered me. So, and the last point where I'll just sum up, I mean, there are hopes, there are people, there are movements going on all over the world who ask for voluntary simplicity, voluntary poverty, slow city concept. I am rich, but I choose to live like a poor. I have a Mercedes car, but I will ride a cycle for 2 days. There are people who live a Gandhian way of life. Simplicity can be fashion, as your director, madam, she's sitting. I mean, she's an icon of simplicity and greatness. So there are people who are philanthropists, who believe in joy of giving, and that is why Gandhi called for Bhudan and Gramdan and all kinds of dan, because Gandhi believed in this positive attributes of human beings. So at the last, I would just sum up with this Gandhian manifesto of living in harmony with nature. It says 6 things: respect life, reject violence, share with others, listen to understand. We have forgotten listening. We just say and go away. So listen to understand, preserve the climate, and rediscover the solidarity. So this is the solidarity, this is the affinity, this is the sisterhood, this is the womanhood for which we are looking. Thank you so much, Sarada ma'am. I salute you for keeping up these, beautiful values in your institution. And when I see you, I feel so motivated, so happy. Love you, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And also one thing, I wanted to wear a sari, but yesterday the temperature was 4 and I was feverish. And the midnight I was shivering, so I thought better I just come in my coat and jacket and all. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have touched the critical and relevant points in current scenario. Very rightly said. Actually, we should teach our new generation the concept of harmony, respect for women, sensitivity about environment, maximum utilization of environment and resources. That is very well said. We well realize conviction, how you spoke, how much really you follow Gandhian philosophy and you are a true Gandhian. I'm really a proud alumni of Mahayani College, and I feel so happy and thankful to you for accepting our invitation and sharing your wonderful thoughts with us. Thank you so much once again, ma'am. Now I would like to request Dr. Deepa Nyadhish to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Neeta Khandepkar. Over to you, Deepa.
Thank you, Dr. Ruchi. I'm pleased and honored to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Neeta Khandepkar, Madam, who is a professor of Department of History, University of Mumbai. She has completed her Doctor of Literature in the domain of missionary history from Sambalpur University, Orissa in 2011. She is a postdoctoral scholar of missionary history from UGC, New Delhi. PhD in Maritime History from University of Mumbai. She has published many papers in reputed journals. She specializes in modern maritime history and Christian missionary history. She has visited several countries like United States, Canada, Italy, Malaysia, Indonesia, and China with support from UGC and ICCR New Delhi. She was a chairperson of Victoria University at New Zealand. She was awarded with the Department of History Scholarship of Mumbai University. She was one of the advisory committee member in Marathwada Itihas Parishad, Maharashtra. She has also got Teacher Fellowship Award from University Grand Commission. She was a member of Board of Studies in History and Archaeology, University of Mumbai. She is recognized PhD and MPhil guide of University of Mumbai and Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith Pune. She also authored 2 books, namely Konkan Coast and the Christian Missionaries in Coastal Maharashtra. She is a member of more than 14 professional academic bodies like Indian History Congress, Indian Association for American Studies, South Indian History Congress, and many more. These are only the highlights of her long list of accomplishments. Without more delay, now I request Madam to throw some light on today's topic, living in harmony with nature. Over
I
to
would
you.
like to share my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please allow me because I would like to share from my side. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. In fact, my association with Menon College way back, I think 2009, I was in Somaya College. And during the 30th January remembrance, only I came to know about Menon College. So if you say 2009 and today we are in 2022, so it is a 13-year-old association. Well, I would like to pick up from where Dr. Vidya Madam told about Sri Menon Sir. Gandhian of Bhandup. Very, very truly said, Madam, he is Gandhian of Bhandup. And today's slide, which I have prepared on harmony with nature, somewhere it is related to how this Menon College can be really a mark, especially with its eastern location, how it can make a mark in nature. So are my slides visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have entitled my slide as today's presentation as living in harmony with nature. With lot of examples, I am highlighting about this aspect. Well, and some of the experiences of the university where I am put up is also a part of my slide presentation. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I start with my presentation as harmony means. What does harmony mean I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So today when I saw the dictionary, a lot of meanings of harmony: agreement in feeling, approach, action, sympathy, pleasing interaction. So with these so many meanings of harmony, I am taking further my presentation. Recently, Bombay University got itself NAC accredited, and this newspaper clipping is from Lok Satta newspaper, which talks about the biodiversity covered of the Vidyanagari campus by three of our own departments in harmony. These three departments came up: life sciences, geography, and NSS department, and they studied lot of flora and fauna of Vidyanagari campus. Now see, this is a very nice example: environmental documentation with scientific approach on University of Mumbai's campus, trees having QR code. If you happen to enter our campus from the Warli gate, you will find n number of trees having these QR codes. And as you can use your mobile, you can learn about the tree in detail. Now, further slides, I am giving some examples. These are another tree from the campus, different species, pleasing interaction with nature, I have entitled it. And something very important here is, see, because money is also equally important when you do certain kind of an activity. So the college which sponsored the university for this project, the logo of the college is there. Our own university logo is there, and the QR code and the name of the tree. So this is an Avkash neem tree. Its flower is very fragrant prone. You can see the arrow I am marking here. In my vicinity, I stay in Bhandup West also, these trees are there, and these flowers go high up. These flowers you are seeing are done by me. I have collected the flower from the floors, packed up in a leaf and put up on the QR code so that you can see, because the flowers grow on high rise, so not visible. So as far as the clicking part is concerned, I did it for that. So this is a very nice activity which my university did it, and I'm extremely proud. This is one more example from the campus: rare cannonball tree with its fruits seen with digitally coded. Cannonball tree ज्याला मला वाटतं नाग चाफा पण म्हणतात मराठी में, उसके फूलों की सुगंध बहुत बढ़िया होती है और उसका ये फल जो है बिल्कुल कैनन बॉल की तरह नजर आता है. नाउ ये सब झाड़ आप लोग सोच रहे होंगे कि मैं यूनिवर्सिटी के क्यों बता रही हूँ. देयर इज अ वेरी बिग रीजन. हियर आई कम टू द रीजन. The vicinity of V.K. Krishna Menon College is also beautifully located in SEZ zone. Bhandup East is a very SEZ zone. No high-rise buildings are there, luckily. So why not make a very good use of these beautiful vicinity which our founder has created. So trees in the premises of V.K. Krishna Menon College can also be digitally coded so that more nature awareness is created. An example below can be picked up. The college logo can be put up. If you want a founder's stamp, P. Menon sir's photograph can be put up, and why not we can put up in many of the trees across the college premises. And I wish the EVS department of the college can take this initiative with the NSS department. So my motivation behind this first part was how nature is so important. As Vidya madam rightly said, locally, let us do something locally and then slowly take the examples of global. Now, second part, I am talking about salt. This is also coming to local level where your college is the closest to the salt pans, I would say. I was given this book on 2nd October. On the screen, I'm on the photograph where you can see me. This is a very nice book written by Dr. Geeta Radhakrishnan Menon. She wrote in the book, salt is nature's gift like air and water, what Gandhi said. Salt is an essential condiment, a vital part of food for the poor and rich in content. Okay, and we very much know that how the Dandi March route was taken. So chalna kitna important hai, walk is important, and the stamps, of course. Lot of slides are related to stamps because I like collecting stamps, and I wish more than 100 participants are there. So some of the students would take up stamp collection, though I know letter writing is no more much of an hobby, but collecting stamps can be. Now see, the location of your college is not far off from this place. Empty salt pans near Bhandup pumping station. Bhandup pumping station is the closest, I would say, nature heritage as far as Menon College is concerned. So can the college student take up a tour to there? Now, September 2021, I clicked this. This is a round area where the salt pans actually are collected. The heaps of salt are collected. But in September, this salt was already put in truck and it has gone to chemical processing. So these are the areas where the salts are kept, and background you can see is the creek where the salt gets collected, and the salt get collected like this. This is the same vicinity I have clicked in the month of November. Salt starts getting evaporated due to sun slowly and gradually. So my motivation here is students of Menon College and other colleges also can see real harmony with nature within their own premises. And when you go, because this is high up the pumping station, as you go, you can see the beautiful view of Bhandup West also. Now I come to something very important again through stamps. We know the three monkeys, Bura mat dekho, Bura mat bolo, Bura mat kaho. And this is another set of stamps issued by Indian government philately section. Here Gandhi being shown, ecology and environment. This is a denomination of 25 rupees stamp. So you know that if the stamp is having a big denomination, it's valued much. This is again from my university campus slide. As you enter the Warli gate of our Vidya Nagari campus, this selfie point is created. So somewhere influence of Gandhi on our campus is visible, that I want to specify. This is one more example of harmony with nature. We have nests here. Okay, such placards you can see in the campus. We have lot of trees in the campus, but we have lot of residents, animal residents in the form of ant nest, kite nest in our campus. And this I like very much. My university, my campus, it's my responsibility. So when I speak, Avinash sir rightly spoke about environmental responsibility in RA with his own experience very nicely. And I remember when I shifted to Bhandup myself in 2016, one day suddenly I saw Bhandup station platform number 1 painted with brown Warli art painting. And there was somewhere written painted by Menon College students. I was so proud then. Okay, and some of the paintings still are visible. Of course, commercial billboards unfortunately have taken this, but how the college took up a responsibility by protecting an art of a tribal community needs to be remembered today. So another Menon sir was very much there. So I want to register here. Now I come to a poem. First year BA University of Mumbai students learning Hindi who have opted for Hindi have a very big poem written by a very famous Hindi poet, Chayavadi Kavi, Sumitra Nandan Pant. The poem is nearly 4.5 pages. And you can see Sumitra Nandan Pant's lifetime is contemporary to Gandhi. And this is a very, very big poem. You can just see this. Okay, so it's a big poem. I am coming to the very last part of the poem. Poem ends with knowledge lighter. Jnana Jyoti Tumko Pranam. Greetings to Bapu. So in this sense, you can see how the contemporary poets used to write huge long poems as far as their admiration for Bapu is concerned. This is a very recent book which has come to our university library. I could see it. It is entitled Bharat Sutra, written by Berenice Elena. And she has come out with this book very nicely. And the book starts with the verse of Kabir. Now I'm trying to highlight something of Kabir and Gandhi. It starts with Kabir's famous word, Jeeni, Jeeni, Beeni, Chadariya, because we know that Kabir was a weaver from the weaving community. And
ma'am, sorry to interrupt. Aapka presentation band ho gaya hai.
Ha, my presentation is closed. Okay. Where was on the last slide?
We couldn't see the poem you were talking about.
Okay, okay. Okay, the poem is very much a part of the syllabus. Now you can see it. Okay, okay. I'm soon doing it. Not much slides are left. I will run through my slides and finish on time because I know there are other speakers also.
Ma'am, still presentation is not visible.
Yes, yes. I'm sharing again. Yeah, yeah. So the poem is very much there in the textbook, which is entitled as काव्य सरिता. बट मैंने जानबूझ के हिंदी की पोएम ली बिकॉज इंग्लिश में तो बहुत पोएम्स है. Subramaniam Bharati, the famous Tamil poet, has already written a very nice poem on Gandhi, which I spoke when I came to the college in October month due to the Jayanti celebration. So I thought of not repeating. Is it visible here now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. So, okay, I will just go through these slides only now because not much about the poem I want to speak. Just to sensitize student ki how you can learn Gandhi through multiple ways. This is a very recent book which I saw in the library, and it starts with this Kabir's verse from Jeeni Jeeni Bhini Chadariya, and it is translated into English by the author. 8 petals of the spinning lotus, 8 petals of the spinning wheel, 5 elements to weave it. 5 elements, पंचधातु हम लोग बहुत मानते हैं, air, water, fire and everything. How you know that when weaving takes place, the climate is equally very important. So something related to that Kabir is talking. And Gandhi, when he writes, the earth has enough resources for our need, but not for our greed. He was also talking something what Kabir talked. He was addressing the cosmic world, the environment. Am I audible now? And you can see the screen? Yes? Hello?
Yes, madam, we can see.
The book by Alina, why I am highlighting about this book is she has a special chapter on khadi, handloom and power looms over there. Here she highlights very beautifully how women played an important role in charkha, but in the last part where I'm running the slide down part, she highlights how if women are cooking or anybody for that matter is cooking and you wear a cotton cloth, it is far safer because it won't catch fire easily than you are wearing a chemical fiber. How Gandhi brought into prominence khadi. See, khadi cloth was very much used in India before Gandhi also, but Gandhi's role was he brought into prominence as a mass movement. This is highlighted by the author here. And how charkha is symbolically important, very nicely Vidya madam highlighted here. Again, I go to a bit slides related to environment. This is a very rare scenario in the campus. One day I was just going out of the campus and I saw a bat hanging at the down part of a trunk. Normally the bats never come down, they are always hanging up. Might be some health problem or something, but the relations, the harmony, pleasing interaction in nature is very visible. So are our Menon College students also viewing the big environmental concept which the college has on both sides of the building? Now again, something when I travel always towards VT side, you might have also noticed Chinchpokli, there is a station before Bhaikala it comes, I think. Now, lot of railway, one of the railway DGs earlier had adopted this scheme of planting gardens across the stations so that they are beautifully looked at and having a kind of a poster which can really highlight about how important is nature. But I want to show you these two. These are the symmetry monuments at the background. You can very much see as the Chinchpokli station, the train leaves for another station further towards VT. This whole symmetry is visible. So how the monument is very close to the station, but why I am highlighting this monument is very important. See, these monuments predominantly house the cemetery of Jewish people who were in Mumbai. And 10 years back, I was reading a newspaper clipping. I came to know that a Muslim fellow looks after this cemetery. What is the present position? I don't know. So communal harmony कैसे होनी चाहिए, again Vidya madam highlighted. So this is very much a part of Mumbai, and you can see the natural and man-made jungle across. So communal harmony, Gandhi very much highlighted. We may ignore Gandhi at our own risk. Dr. Martin Luther King rightly highlighted how harmony this is. This is again a 10 years old clipping, because I keep clippings across Gandhi on my files. So when I speak approach action also as a definition of harmony, one student Nazni, she wrote Hanuman Chalisa in Urdu, and she belonged to Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapit. So this is the real harmony which Gandhi was talking about. Shramadhan in ashram life, Gandhi always propagated. In fact, the best thing about Menon College I will see is whether you go to Menon College on 2nd October or 30th program. After the program, the all staff takes broom and does Shramadhan in Menon College. So how the college staff, students are close to nature, we have always seen. This site I had already shown you when I came on 2nd October. But some students who were not there, this is a very special interactive site developed by IIT Mumbai on Gandhi. So you can take just a screenshot, and I conclude further with again an advertisement which came on Gandhi's 100 years in newspaper by Illustrated Weekly. I thank Chairman Dr. Sarada Menon here, Principal Saroja Fadnis Madam, Ruchi Tandon Madam, and all the students and staff of the college. And also one person I would like to just mention in 5 seconds, Dr. Dam, who is the last speaker today. When I went to Canada 10 years back, this person hosted a conference for 2 days, international conference, doing all the work single-handedly. So how down to the earth this speaker, he will be speaking today, I saw it myself. So with he's an inspiration for me rather. Thank you for calling me here.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for sharing your experiences and experiments on digital code in Mumbai University Vidya Nagari campus, and implementing this idea in our college premises by putting our beloved late founder chairman's photo on it. Definitely, our college will look forward into it. That idea is really nice. And also, thank you for highlighting today's topic, harmony, and different aspects of harmony through giving examples of Mumbai University's the bat and the Shramdan and its relation with the nature. Thank you once again, madam. Now I request Dr. Sunita to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Muthien. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you. I feel privileged and very happy to introduce our next speaker, who is from South Africa, a place where all Gandhians know very well. Whenever we speak of Gandhi, we actually begin with South Africa. Welcome, Madam Bernedette Mutil. Madam has served part-time on South Africa's Constitutional Commission for Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Rights, where she was responsible for parliamentary liaison, research and policy development and public education. She was also Deputy Director General, Social Transformation and Economic Empowerment in the Presidency, where she served in high-level economic cluster. Madam has over 200 publications and conference presentations, some of which have been translated from English into at least 16 other languages. She was the first Fulbright Amiable Fellow at Stanford University and holds postgraduate degrees in political science from University of Cape Town and Stellenbosch University. Madam has served on the Executive Council of the International Peace Research Association as a convener of the Global Political Economic Commission and was co-founder of the African Peace Research and Education Association. Ms. Bernedette Muthien serves on various international advisory boards, including the international journals Human Security Studies and Journal of Human Security. as well as the International Institute on Peace Education. I welcome you, Madam, to this webinar today to talk and highlight and enlighten us on environmental responsibilities and social justice law of peace. Welcome you, Madam. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be with you today and to meet all my new friends now, Dr. Sunita, Dr. Rushi and others, Dr. Menon, and to see my old friends like Dr. Vidya Jain and later Matt Meyer after me. So I wanted to apologize because I'm just now busy recovering from a terrible virus that had me for 3 weeks. We don't know if it's COVID or just Satan that I'm wrestling with, but it has me very weak. I'm normally very energetic. So I apologize for being a little bit less energetic than normal. So now Vidya can think that I'm a normal person instead of on a super battery. Now I've got 6 points. Apart from thanking you very much for having me here today, I have 6 key points to make in the time limit that I have. And you'll find Gandhiji throughout everything I say today and indeed throughout our lives. In fact, my father is from Chennai or Madras and came via Mauritius to India, to South Africa, forgive me, from India. So, and he was a devout Gandhian, so I grew up with Gandhi as well. The first point I want to make is, and it won't be narrow like environmentalism, etc. I'm just going to make 6 broad points because the time is very limited. I'd be very happy to come back another time to speak in more depth about any of these matters and or the intersections between them. The first point I quickly want to make is that South Africa, after apartheid, promulgated a remarkable constitution, as we all know, and it has an unprecedented 16 categories of non-discrimination and institutions even like the Human Rights Commission. So this newly democratized government of us have adopted neoliberal economic policies, and this is very critical for us to remember, neoliberal economic policies that's caused hardship for the majority of impoverished Black people and women in the country. And this economic suffering is somewhat mitigated by widespread allocation of modest social grants to the vulnerable. Some people argue that our country's constitutional rights are only so-called paper rights, de jure or in-law rights. They argue that de facto or in practice rights would ensure socioeconomic justice for everyone, not only advancement for the privileged minority. Inequality and suffering does cause conflict, obviously, with crime skyrocketing in the 20 years since democracy, since 1994 here. And this includes gender-based violence, most importantly, which is outlawed by some of the most progressive legislation and policies in the world. It shows to us that no one is immune from violence. The perpetrators of crime and violence are often survivors of violence themselves. No one jumps out of bed or out of the womb and starts being violent. We are survivors of violence, and this often is the impetus for perpetration of violence. The very suffering creates the conditions for the perpetration. Perpetrators of violence are brutalized by previous violence and through the very act of their violating, and you will see Gandhiji in this too. So to the witnesses of the violence, the onlookers and bystanders are victims of violence. Even reading statistics on crime, violence, and poverty causes vicarious trauma. I was in Parliament one day and the police higher echelons came to present on crime statistics and they were just rattling off, oh, so many rapes, so many murders. I was sitting in the parliamentary meeting and thinking, my goodness me, there's a psychopathic cleavage between what they're presenting and the feelings it was evoking in me as a human being in relation to other people being raped, murdered, etc. So we can even get vicarious trauma from looking at rape statistics. Or indeed, as Vidya Ji had said earlier, in my country, a woman is murdered by a male partner every 4 or so hours. And even knowing this is vicariously traumatic. So no one is immune from conflict, from inequality, and from suffering. So everyone benefits from equality, from justice, from non-violence, from positive and just peace. South Africa has the laws, the policies, and the institutions to safeguard rights to equality and freedom from discrimination, to seek to redress the brutal oppressive past, and to co-create societies of justice and peace. These rights we must continue to safeguard with our lives against these anti-democratic forces that are constantly threatening our democracies all over the world, whether it be India, the United States, or South Africa. To work with one's, the second point I'm making, to work with one's erstwhile enemy requires inner healing. To forgive that enemy for their perpetration, no matter how brutal, independent of whether that so-called enemy has acknowledged, let alone sought forgiveness for their perpetration. You'll see Gandhiji here in particular as well. The lack of acknowledgement, let alone search for forgiveness on the part of perpetrators, leave the onus for healing and moving on entirely to the survivors of the victims' families. We live in societies and communities and need each other. It is important for each of us to forgive ourselves and forgive others over time for small and large perpetrations. Gandhi, Mandela, Desmond Tutu showed us that this is possible. In our very lives, we peace activists live this reality of forgiveness and reconciliation, of compassion for ourselves and for perpetrators, of compassion for all, daily. Martin Luther King, among others, has said that hatred only breeds more hatred. We are literally forced to be compassionate, to love thy enemy as you love yourself. The third point I want to make is about Ubuntu, the indigenous concept that applies to many indigenous societies the world over. Even in 17th century England, John Donne wrote a series of meditations, and he said, no man is an island unto himself. Hemingway's book, For Whom the Bell Tolls, was segueing of that. So Ubuntu essentially means I am because I care, I am because I belong. It's different to the Cartesian notion of I am because I think, a positivist cleavage of head from heart, individual from society. It's also different to the German concept of Schadenfreude, or harm joy, deriving pleasure from others' misfortune. Ubuntu means all our well-being is interdependent, but one person's success cannot be at the expense of another. That for one to be happy, everyone must be happy. Thus, to realize Ubuntu requires egalitarianism or societal equity. Societies free of hatred, prejudice, violence. That in collectivity, everyone must satisfy not only their own needs, but the needs of everyone else too, within their means. It is in this cogent appeal for humanity that Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu's teachings on Ubuntu or African humanism is most like Gandhi's teachings, especially Gandhi's vision of Sarvodaya, forgive my pronunciation, or welfare of all, which is related to the other Indian saying, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or global human family, as discussed in Professor N. Radhakrishnan paper, and I quote him here, the world is a family, one is a relative, the other stranger, say the small-minded, the entire world is a family, live the magnanimous, be detached, be magnanimous, lift up your mind, enjoy the fruit of Brahmanic freedom from the Maha Upanishad. The fourth point I want to make is that Africa after Asia, there's a big relationship between us as two vast continents with similar trajectories, etc. Africa after Asia is the second most populous continent in the world, an embodiment of diversities. So varied too is its history of colonization by different colonizers. European colonization was patriarchal, and the imposition of patriarchy on the egalitarian indigenous peoples was central to the colonizing processes. Hence, decolonization and restoration of our ancient and existing indigenous knowledge is important, given the matricentric societies that still exist across every continent, and notably in Africa, including in almost every country here, from Algeria to Zimbabwe. We must acknowledge the past and present matricentric societies across the continent, not unlike India's own Kasi Panarangaro of Meghalaya, and the Nairas of Kerala. Wonder why Kerala is doing so well? Think again. Women were at the center of egalitarian pre-colonial societies. matricentric elements which still remain in many of our indigenous cultures. Colonialism and capitalism fostered inequality, including socioeconomic inequality. So when we refer to leading women in Africa, it helps to ask who they are, leading women in India too. How have they become prominent? More often than not, these women are from privileged sectors of society with access to education, political and other power. They didn't just jump out and become brilliant. They had access to privilege. What do they do with the privilege is the question we ask. Wangari Maathai, for example, worked with poor and other dispossessed communities, empowering women, reclaiming the land and indigenous knowledge of the land for the benefit of communities. Like Gandhi and Mandela, Maathai served with humility, working especially with the most humble people. Here today, we are privileged to have a great many people and women in particular from India who are similar examples of this beautiful example of humility, serving with humility and using privilege for the greater good. Our auntie, Professor Betty Reardon, the grandmother of peace studies, she speaks of the quotidian, about ordinary everyday people and women in particular, people who do not always have access to resources or to speak for themselves, let alone for other people. It is these humble people whom we must serve with devotion, selflessness and humility. It is to these common people that Nobel and other prizes must be awarded. I'm really very serious about it. Their unrelenting resilience, despite genocides and continued depredations, makes them the worthiest of celebration. When a community gets a Nobel Peace Prize, I will be able to die in peace. More so than the elites, who include Gandhi, Mandela, and Tutu, who are all from comparatively privileged families, bless them all. Many peace processes are state-centered, are high-level, often ignoring the ordinary women and people who suffer from conflicts the most. High-powered, state-centered elite women benefit their own socioeconomic class mostly and serve as role models for ordinary people to aspire to. But it is the mass-based movements, and I cannot say that enough, communities led by women and others, peace and justice and women's movements, that are often less visible, yet very powerful and effective. Mass-based movements led by ordinary community-based women and people should be more visibilized. Our hopes for a peaceful and just world depends on them. The fifth point, and I have 6 points, is about Gandhi, Mandela, and Tutu, and the idea that these illustrious men stood there alone like a statue in the square of a major city, Gandhi, Mandela, Tutu. They don't have any spouse or wife, they don't have family, they don't have context, they don't have community, they just pop up there, this giant statue. But is their life's work so individual, so solitary, or is it a collective experience via family and communities? In this sense, Desmond Tutu has always honored his beloved wife Leah, naming their legacy foundation in both their names. I implore us not to forget the contributions of Gandhi's companion, or his wife, his beloved Kasturbai Makhanji Kapadia, to his life's work and the people he worked with from South Africa, such as the people on the collective Tolstoy Peace Farm, to the people in England and India, all the people who have contributed to Gandhi's life's work. And his wife in particular, Kasturbai, did a great many powerful things. Imprisoned in South Africa, she was teaching others literacy who couldn't write, imprisoned with her, and so on. And she was doing a great many good deeds once she settled in South Africa, and she suffered greatly as well. So I always, when I think of Gandhiji Mahatma, I never forget his beloved Kasturbai and all she did in South Africa and India for the people there. Mandela also was vividly supported by his second wife, Winnie, who equally suffered greatly in prison and banishment, and during democracy, his third wife, Gratha Machel. So we should really not forget the women whose contributions informed the work of these famous men, because men do not stand in isolation, they stand in context of family and community. The sixth and final point I want to make is that Gandhi, Mandela, and Tutu used their privilege to advance the interests of ordinary people, much like a great many of you here, and I'm very grateful to know you all and be inspired by you. These great men lived the example that hatred and violence fosters only more hatred and violence, and that compassion and healing is needed for an end to inequality and violence. Johann Galtung, the other great grandfather of peace studies, asserted that violence is direct or personal. Someone hits another person. It is structural or institutional in the very structures of our societies. And for me, very importantly, it is cultural, resonant in the mindsets and prejudice in the consciousness that prevails, even if the laws change. How am I discriminating against someone? If I'm looking at someone, am I seeing a dark-skinned person? Am I seeing a male or a female person? Am I seeing a person against whom I discriminate automatically? Versus the only change that will effect true change. So as we address the direct violence to prevent wars, we must transform institutions to not violate, for example. All people must have equal access to resources, and these rights cannot be passive. It must be active rights. So too, it's important to address cultural violence, violence that persists in people's mindsets or consciousness. Unless cultural violence is addressed, no society can claim it is at peace. This is especially ironic in India, with its foundations on the life's work of Gandhiji and his peers, and South Africa built on Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and other people. How can we make our societies truly peaceful, not only in word, but in deed? And this should also include gender and other inequalities and violence, from caste to you name it, and the environment, as Vidya had reminded us about Mother Earth earlier. Peace and justice are so interdependent. Our strategies must be intersectional. They must address all oppressions, inequalities, and violence, from socioeconomic class or caste to gender, and indeed the rural-urban divides. Mandela said in 1993 that all freedoms and all oppressions are interdependent. He would not feel free until all people everywhere are free. Now I ask us to join hands in solidarity across diversities and in strategic alliances so that we all liberated from inequality, oppression, and violence, so that we all benefit from justice and peace, harnessing technologies of strategic nonviolence, often based on Gandhiji and all the people that he worked with. Forgiveness of self and others, compassion and solidarity, and placing women back at the center of societies will liberate us all. Namaste.
Thank you, Ms. Bernedette Muthien. The stage is open now for questions. Anybody has anything, any queries to ask to Madam? I think you all have put us in deep thought, Madam. It was really thoughtful, the session is. And it's my pleasure to inform you that in Menon College, for years we have been spreading the message of Gandhism and Gandhian way of life. But today it was totally a different experience to listen from you about African humanism, another form of Sarvodaya, welfare for all. Yes, Madam, and you asked the right questions to us. What are we doing with the privileges which we have received? And I'm sure to this moment onwards, we are asking these questions to ourselves. Yes, gender needs to be on the forefront of. With this thoughts and words, thank you. It was a pleasure having you, Madam. Now I request Dr. Saloni Bhushan to introduce the next speaker. Thank you once again, Madam.
Sorry to intervene. I request all of you to please put your videos on for our group photograph. We are in the midst of the webinar, so we'll have a group photograph, and then I would request Saloni ma'am to proceed further. Just few seconds, please. Just have a photograph. Thank you.
Can we go ahead, Ruchi? Dr. Ruchi?
Yes, please, Saloni ma'am. Sorry for interruption.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Sunita. It is my privilege to introduce next distinguished speaker of today's session, Dr. Namita Nimbalkar, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, University of Mumbai. Dr. Namita has rich experience in academics and research. She has 1.5 decades experience in teaching, done her doctoral work on Gandhi's concept of religion and communal harmony. Madam has also done 4 minor research projects on Gandhi, Paradigm of Peace, an overview in 21st century, Gandhi and women empowerment, Silence, the unspoken and unthought, a study on the anti-communal work since independence based on Gandhian philosophy. Madam has received many scholarships, fellowships at national and state level. Dr. Namita has presented and published many research papers in national and international conferences. She has also co-edited a book on Gandhi in the New Millennium, Issues and Challenges, and authored 2 textbooks on foundation course for MCOM program. Dr. Namita has also been resource person in many seminars and workshops. She is an active member on different bodies like Anti-Tobacco Board, FTA, Government of Maharashtra. She is a member in editorial board, Philosophica, and annual bilingual philosophical journal of Department of Philosophy, Bongaigaon College, Assam. She is an advisory member for UGC-sponsored Gandhian Studies Center, Vikas Knight College. These are few glimpses of the achievements of Dr. Namita. On behalf of V.K. Krishna Menon College, I welcome Dr. Namita Nimbalkar. Madam, it would be a delight to hear you. Without wasting time further, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Namita.
Thank you, Dr. Saloni, for the introduction. And it is really a privilege and a proud moment for me to come back to V.K. Menon College. I remember the initial years when I would be associated, and throughout my journey too, of being associated with the college, as well as meeting Menon sir too, and having rich interactions with him whenever there would be a seminar on Gandhian philosophy. So thank you so very much. I thank all the students who are here listening to what is to be communicated, as well as to all the faculty members too who are there with us today. The topic on which we have been hearing people since afternoon is a topic of great importance. And I must congratulate everyone concerned over here to think about how Gandhi is being relevant for the youth, or Gandhi for youth. Now, when we say youth, so what exactly do we mean by youth? Like, who is young? Do we go by the dictionary meaning? Or do we say that a person who is an infinite source of excitement, or we can say a person who is full of vibrancy, a person full of energy, or a person who is trying to bring about change, or being innovative, or who is providing solutions to the different problems that we may be facing with, or one who is adventurous, one who is open-minded, and many more. These are not only the adjectives which we give to a person who may be defined as young, but also these are the very, very qualities which really makes this universe, this planet, a vibrant place to live in. Now, when we speak of these qualities, these adjectives, which technically, or rather which has been stereotyped as far as the definition of young people are concerned, I feel and I find, with whatever limited and meager knowledge of Gandhi that I have, that he is one person among many persons, of course. He is one person who fits the description totally of being a person who is young, a person who is a youth. And when I say that he is a person who fits in totally, so this is where exactly I would like to draw the attention of my student friends who are over here to understand that how Gandhi is so very important and such an integral part of our life. And such a and for this, I wouldn't be going much into the history. However, I would urge you people, in case if you have not read his autobiography, to read his autobiography. And in this autobiography, you have, there are so many chapters which are there in this autobiography. And here you will meet the young Mohandas, you will meet a teenager, you will meet a person who has gone abroad for his studies. You will also meet a person who is there in South Africa, a person who has come back from South Africa to India, and you will find an activist Gandhi. Now, this particular autobiography becomes of great relevance to us. And the reason for this is that in this autobiography, we come across various such passages, various such chapters, or various such places where the young Mohan, out of curiosity, he smokes, he steals, he goes against the religious injunction, and he has meat and a lot more things. However, what also I would like to bring it to your notice is that in spite of all the adventures that he has done, in spite of all, a child in that particular age would be doing, there is something that sets him apart from many of his peers. And what is this that sets him apart? And that setting him apart is the introspection which Gandhi keeps on doing about himself from time to time again. So this is there is a constant endeavor in him to better himself than what he was yesterday, to better himself than what he was few minutes back. And there would be a constant dialogue which he used to have with his conscience. Now, this exactly is where I find that Gandhi becomes relevant for all of us. Because what happens with many of us is that we are all the time trying to seek a dialogue, not with the self, but with someone who is outside the self. We are trying to seek dialogue with others in the society. And there's hardly a time wherein we would try to seek dialogue with the self, talk to the self, bring about changes, or try to introspect, try to understand the self. And that is where I find that Gandhi becomes very important for us. He, through whatever he has written in his autobiography, do deep readings about it. And these deep readings will give you many, many insights which will help you to think, which will help you to discuss. For example, look at him when he is in the UK, when he is in England, and he wants to become a perfect English gentleman. And what does he do over there to become a perfect English gentleman? He takes up lessons in music, he stitches a coat for himself, and there are so many other things which you will read in the autobiography. But over there itself, in one of the chapter, he writes that, no, I realize that this is not what I have to do. And what does he do there? We find that he becomes an experimenter. And he becomes an experimenter in vegetarianism. Not only in vegetarianism, you will find that he becomes an experimenter in so many avenues of his life. Now, this experiments which he carried on throughout his life is something that we have to keep it in mind. Why I'm saying that we have to keep it in mind? Because much of the time we notice that once a particular goal is attained by us, once a particular aim is achieved by us, many of us become complacent. And many of us feel that, oh, okay, I've got a job, now I don't have to do anything beyond that. Or I have got particular XYZ in my life, now I don't have to look anything beyond that. So this complacency, this being complacent which is there, it should not hit us. We have to be like Gandhi. And to be like Gandhi is that it's very difficult to fill the shoes of this man. But at the same time, we have to keep on bringing about constant changes. And as it is, not only Heraclitus, but even Gautam Buddha says that change is the only constant feature that we have. So keep on improvising ourselves. Keep on changing oneself. And this change is something that we feel becomes very, very essential as far as bringing about a change in the society is concerned. Now, just as the other thing which appeals to me about Gandhi is that how he has kept humans as the center of all his activity. Like if you look at the goals of economics, you will find that it is profit making, which is the goal of economics. If you look at politics, the goal of politics is wherein we talk about power. Whereas when you look at Gandhi and you try to understand his philosophy, you will find that for Gandhi, it is the human being which is the center of all activity. And this human being, all activities, so be it social, be it political, be it economic, be it educational, be it cultural, every activity will revolve around this human being. And that's why when you look at a simple thing, or not a simple but a very complex thing, that is Nai Talim, or when we speak about the education policy of Gandhiji, you will find that instead of giving emphasis on 3 R's, he is giving emphasis on 3H. He says reading, writing, arithmetic is secondary. What is more important is where your head, your hand, and your heart, these 3 things should be in coordination with each other. And this is exactly where you will find that the new education policy which is getting implemented, you'll find that there's a lot of focus on this 3H also, on the cultivation of the 3H. So this is something which one has to look into. That is how this 3H has to take place. Not only this, when we speak about economics, so I'm really grateful to all the earlier speakers who have made my job very easy, and I just have to revise what they have said. So even in the economic perspective, Gandhi talks about minimization of needs. And my dear young friends, I always think that if Gandhi would be here today, how would he have reacted? How would he bring about a change? And to all my young friends who are there on Instagram, who are there on Snapchat, who are there on Facebook, just as you follow the different influencers who are taking up a particular topic and talking about it, I too feel that Gandhi would have used Instagram to the best of his advantage. I too feel that he would have been a very great influencer. And I too feel that he would have been a person who would have brought about many social causes, and he would have urged the youth to be a part and parcel of this social cause. Of course, Gandhiji is not here, but his legacy is here. And in this legacy, I would urge you, my dear boys and girls, my dear friends, my dear young friends, that you have to take up certain issues. You have to and be an influencer in that way. Like I come across so many, I'm on Instagram, I follow many people on Instagram, I follow many people who are bringing about social changes through their Instagram. And this particular media can also be used in a very, very effective way by each one of you to see the change that you have to bring. Gandhiji says that be the change to see the change in the world. And there's always a question that how do we change this world? In what way do we change the world? Where do I take the first step? The first step is a baby step. And this baby step is to be taken by you, by me. And very small step you have to take. And what is this small step? See, what is it that you are passionate about? Are you passionate about saving water? Are you passionate about saving electricity? Are you passionate about using the last bit of paper that you have? Are you passionate about not letting the food go wasted? Are you passionate? Just look at things that really pricks you and which makes you think, which makes you introspect. Start working on it. And you will find that you would not be the only one. There will be many hands which will join. And that's it. That is what is the youth power that we talk about. Think about Greta Thunberg. That young girl, a small girl. And when she said that, no, we are going on strike every Friday. Why? Because we feel that the environment has to change. Now, she didn't have anyone as supporters in the initial phase. But slowly and steadily, we are aware about the stupendous support which she has received globally. And more importantly, my dear, what we can learn from Gandhi is the conviction that he had within himself. This is a conviction that we have to have within ourselves. Look at that Gandhi who on Pittsburgh station, he was thrown away. And why he was thrown? Because he said that I have bought a ticket for a first class and I will be traveling by first class. So he was thrown out of the railway station. He was thrown out of the train. Now, and that didn't waver his conviction. We call it as a kind of a Copernican revolution, which has taken place in the field of social sciences, like, where the universe has been shifted upside down. And that was a time when Gandhi decided he had two options: either go back to India or be in South Africa and fight against the discrimination which is there. He chose to stay over there. And as he chose to stay over there, he thought about so many other issues which were affecting not only the Indians in South Africa but back home too. So be very sensitive. And being very sensitive is where, when we talk about economics, minimalism is again making a comeback. Now, we talk about so many minimalist influencers. Like, if you're on Instagram, the various influencers who are there, who talk about being minimalist and who say that, oh, we need to have only two shirts. Why talk about others? Look at Mark Zuckerberg. Look at this iPhone person. See, I'm forgetting his name right now. I just saw his movie a few days back. So look at all these people. How many t-shirts do they have? What are they doing? They have one uniform or one t-shirt for themselves. And that's where they are, like, you will find them wearing the same stuff. Being rich is not in economic prosperity. Being rich is where we decide how we can give back to the society. Being rich is not in the kind of goods that we have or the kind of phones that we have. Being rich is when you are physically and mentally well-being. And so this is exactly where you as a youth have to think. Because I also know that though I'm talking about Instagram, though I'm talking about social media platforms, I'm also aware that just as we have so many influencers who will bring you or who will bring to your notice how things can take place, there are many others whom we try to ape. And these are the social media influencers who would try to say that, no, it's not minimalism. It's like, being maximalist. It's like, being how much you can amass more and more. And so there are so many whom we follow of those varieties too. And that's where discretion comes into being. And in this discretion, it is essential for us that we should be so, like, value systems which are there of us, it has to be so strong, or rather we keep on improvising, introspecting ourselves, that we should be aware, and we should be aware of how to discriminate between what is correct and what can be corrected in a better way. I refrain myself from using the words wrong, because knowingly many of us would not be wrong. Okay, so it's just that because of our ignorance, we may be on a particular path, but once we are enlightened, so we can shift from that path and we can come to another path which may be a correct or which may be a right path. So this is where you have to, like, keep on thinking about it on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And there's one more thing I would like to appeal to all of you. Gandhi was a prolific writer. Not only a writer, he was a reader too. You should see the number of books. You just have to, like, once you go through whatever he has written, there are not only the influences that he had about people from all over the globe, but also the rich literature that he has read. I would urge you people that make it as a resolution, and don't wait for New Year to make a resolution. Resolution can take place on any day. Every day is a new year for us. Every day is a new day for us. Make a resolution to read at least 5 to 6 books in a year. Again, I'm saying it's baby steps. So just 5 to 6 books, worthy books, and try to see that how we can, like, have authentic information, go to certain authors. So there can be self-help books which can be read by you. There can be spiritual books. There can be autobiographies. There can be adventurous books. There are, like, different ways or different classifications of books. Read it from the historical perspective. And even, I again come back to you, my dear friends, Netflix also is a good platform. There are so many movies on Netflix which will be bringing us information from the historical perspective. Not only Netflix, there are different OTT platforms which are available to us. So try to use your discretion, and using this discretion, try to shape your personality. And as you shape your personality, it's not only that you're working for the present, my dear friends, you would also be contributing towards the future. And this is where exactly Gandhi becomes important. And this is exactly where we have to understand that how Gandhi becomes, see, basically, you know what, let's I would rather say that if you're punctual, you are being Gandhi. If you are if you are being honest, you're following Gandhi. If you're doing a time management, you're following Gandhi. If you're being truthful, you're following Gandhi. If you're not wasting food, you're following Gandhi. If you're even concerned about the last drop of water, you are following Gandhi. And so, you have to keep on working in this way. And once, let me tell you, none of us are aspiring to be Gandhi, none of us are aspiring to be Gandhians. We are just going to be what we are. And as we are being just what we are, one has to just talk to oneself. And as one talks to oneself, when you change, we also have something called as the butterfly effect. A butterfly, when she flaps her wings, she brings about a change in the it brings about a change in the atmosphere. And along with the atmosphere, the changes can be so far-fetched that it will bring about a change to the extent that where a storm can be created. When a small thing like a butterfly can bring about such a lot of changes, then imagine that you and me with small baby steps can bring about, you just have to think about the level of changes that can be brought out by us. So this is where Gandhi becomes important for us, or this is where you as a youth, I as a young person, I never think of myself chronologically. I may be aging, but because I want to keep on improvising myself all the time, I am going to read stories. I am also training myself to be a storyteller. So in the near future, you will hear me saying stories or recording stories on iPods, and then reaching out to the masses. So this is also what I'm trying to do. Use iPods to your use iPods to, sorry, not iPods, use podcasts to your advantages. So you have podcast is something which is coming up for the next generation. So how you can use this podcast to your advantage? Think about it. Take certain themes, uske upar dialogues karo, and since this is a platform where each one of us have equal space, please use it, my dear friends. Please see to it that error hoga hone do, mistakes will be there, let it be, but we will be learning from our mistakes. And not only that, it will again accentuate our personality, and it will make us a better, if not a better person, you can at least say, oh yeah, I did this, I did that. So curiosity is something which I identify Gandhi with. Had he not been curious, he wouldn't have thought about so many solutions which he has given to us. Had he been something who had been very complacent, we wouldn't have got solutions to many, many issues which were there. So this curiosity which is there, dear friends, keep it alive within you. And once you just don't let it go to rest, this curiosity, we will be forever young. And that's where Gandhi becomes relevant for us, because this is something that I draw my lessons from him. And I thank every one of you for inviting me over and to listen to me. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, madam, for such an insightful session. I really started introspecting, as you said, what is correct and what can be improvised, and hope same for all the participants. Your views on life of Mahatma really gave us a new perspective. Very rightly said, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. The way you analyze the relevance of Gandhi in current context, it was really amazing. Thank you once again, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Now, I request Dr. Ruchi to introduce our next speaker.
I'm given duty to introduce the next speaker, who is a noted historian, orator, and organizer, Professor Matt Mayer. He is a Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association, the world's leading consortium of university-based professors, scholars, students, and community leaders. Sir is the senior research scholar of the University of Massachusetts Amherst Resistance Studies Initiative. He is also active with the International Fellowship of Reconciliation and the War Resisters International. He authored and is the editor of over a dozen of books. Professor Mayer's work focuses on African peace and non-violent studies, 21st century decolonization, the strategies and tactics of movement building and political prisoners of conscience and the abolition of white supremacy. South African Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu, in his introduction to Professor Mayer's first book, Guns and Gandhi in Africa, noted that they, the authors, in the book have looked beyond the short-term strategies and tactics too often devise aggressive people and begin to develop a language which looks at the root of our happiness. Argentine Nobel Peace Laureate Adolphe Perez Esquivel, in his introduction to Professor Mayer's encyclopedic look at issues of US imprisonment, Let Freedom Ring, added to his consistent work as a coalition builder, provides tools for today's activists. We are proud to have Professor Matt you here in this webinar, and we are all eager to listen to you. So without a much delay, please, I hand over the mic to you. Thank you once again for coming here. Good morning, sir.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Rushi. Thank you, my dear sisters and brothers. I say sisters first and foremost, especially to see some dear old friends. Again, as Dr. Namita just said, old only in that we've known each other in past lives. You're very, very young. All of us are young. This white hair is actually just a ruse to make me appear more professorial. And of course, thank you to the organizers of this event and to the new friends we're making here today. I have to say that I'm going to read a little bit and speak extemporaneously a little bit. Those who know me know I'm just now recovering from a little time of having the COVID, Omicron, and this is my first public virtual appearance since getting it a couple of weeks ago. So it's meant that I lacked some time to do the preparations I usually do. So what that means is I've stolen some of the words and work that I'll be presenting today. But happily, I'm doing much better. And also happily, I have a new book coming out, which I'm going to try to share. Yeah, I'm going to share the cover of it with you. So most of what I'm stealing is my own writings from this book, and some writings that are included as the excerpts in this book from Gandhiji and others. And really, when my dear sister, Dr. Vidya Jain, who you heard from earlier, asked me to present today and brought me into this extraordinary space, what was discussed was whether I could talk about the lessons, learning from Gandhiji, action-oriented in terms of environmental responsibilities, social justice, and the law of peace. So I want to break down this presentation on decolonization, decolonizing nonviolence and peace studies, what the peace research field looks like at this moment. I want to break it down in three basic parts. The first part is the problem. The world we are in today, 2022, and the need for insurrectionary uprisings. 2, looking back to look forward, the Sankofa moment, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. And then finally, some inspiring ways forward. And I guess I'm going to just start with the negative and move to the positive, as I think we need to do. I will say I was going to start by commenting on Dr. Namita's, on the previous speaker's commentary, which I was moved by and mentioned in the chat along with my sister Bernedette from South Africa. And the one comment I was going to make, she made herself in the close of her talk. So you really said it all. Because I was going to say that my general approach, as we learn lessons from the past, is to never try to be Gandhi, to never try to be Mandela, to never try to be someone else, and especially for the women, to never try to be men with all of our patriarchal mess. The deal is to try to be yourself. We can learn lessons from the past. We can learn lessons from 100 years ago, but the 21st century requires 21st century leadership and 21st century ideas, and most of that ideas not from men, but from the women who have been doing the work, most of the work, to make the world the peaceful place it needs to be. So with that introduction, I'm going to jump in and try to talk quickly so we have some time for a conversation. The problem I'm going to articulate is a direct reading from the introduction to that new book I mentioned that's coming out shortly. And it looks at, from our point of view, my co-author and co-editor, Wendy Marshall, an African-American activist here from the US, and myself, the situations we face in their totalities. We write, the violence that saturates our worlds, the terror and brutality that radiates outwards historically and geographically from Euro-America, is evident from every level of international policy down to every cell in the human organism. There's a straight line from the destruction of the commons of the 1500s to the 55 million people on Earth currently afflicted by drought. There's a direct connection between the global wildfire crisis, the scorching of even Arctic lands, and the exploitation, degradation, and dispossession of hundreds of millions of people for the profit of a tiny minority. There's a direct connection between the destruction of primary forest lands and agro-industrial production of food and the epidemics of COVID-19, diabetes, and HIV. Is there widespread recognition that we are facing existential threats to our planet and ourselves? Have folks grasped the very perilous position that we collectively are in? And if we grasp the extreme urgency of this moment, do we know where to find the wisdom, guidance, and materials we need to build a future? To move beyond outrage, to organize, to build the roads that will lead us to a dictatorship of solidarity, of love, of reciprocity among humans and between humans and the earth, we must delve deeply into the histories to explore the roots of our current contradictions and forge new pathways towards the world we seek to build. And we hope that some of what I'll say today, some of the quotes I'll give and examples, and some that we give in our writings will help lead that path along. So let's start by this word I said earlier, Sankofa. It's a West African concept. It's a concept that says we look back in order to look forward. We build our history in order to build our future. And therefore, when we talk about Gandhi, and we talk about Archbishop Tutu, and we talk about others, we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the lessons we can glean on the future. So I think it's most significant and most important to say these men were men. They were men of their moment and of their historical period who should not be repeated. We should not think, what they thought in the 1900s, what they thought 50 years ago are appropriate for tomorrow. Some of those thoughts are good, but others, in fact, need revising, rebuilding, new life. So please take the quotes and the comments in a very grain of salt for what we need to do in rebuilding movements today. I say this to say that I, as someone who actually, as was mentioned, was fairly close and a friend of Archbishop Tutu, am sad to watch every day as his actual ideas are being mythologized beyond recognition. And I think the same is done for Gandhi, who's made to be a prophet, almost a messiah, a figure that wasn't a man, but more than a man, someone who he could not replicate because the ideas are too big. The saintliness is too great. We don't need saints. We need organizers. We need people who work together to build new movements for peace and justice. So it's in that context that I say, and this is actually a passage we use in the book, that Gandhi, writing in the journal Young India, wrote, "Nonviolence is not a resignation from all real fighting against wickedness. On the contrary," Gandhiji wrote, "the nonviolence of my conception is a more active and a more real fighting against wickedness than retaliation, whose very nature is to increase wickedness. Satyagraha," as Gandhiji wrote, "is soul force, it's love force, it's truth force, not any one of those things, and not in any way passive, but very active and very real in terms of increasing the conflict and the fight." So I'll turn to Archbishop Tutu, who's now so known for this idea of reconciliation. And the concepts of reconciliation are almost always divorced from the full conception of truth, reconciliation, and reparations that was, in fact, part and parcel of his vision. Because I think it's often forgotten that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was not put together in South Africa, first and foremost, to have a beloved community that hugs one another, but to counteract what was a growing trend right after the end of apartheid, where so many people denied that it was ever really a bad thing, that it ever really happened. We were beginning to see parts of, especially the white community, say, "Oh, apartheid?" A good South African friend, Dennis Brutus, came back after visiting his homeland and coming to the US and said to us, "You know, it was amazing. I went back to post-apartheid South Africa, and no white person I spoke to admitted ever having supported apartheid. It's as if this thing never happened at all." And so the Truth and Reconciliation Commission developed, first and foremost, to say, no, this happened. These atrocities happened. These realities happened. We have to have spaces in every corner of the country where our own people, not our leaders, can speak out and say and testify, this is what happened. So the truth can never be denied, as we deny so many truths, as truth in the US now, under the last president, became almost a joke, where lies could just spurn out from whole cloth with no evidence. So reconciliation, a new South Africa could only be built, and a new world can only be built, if we use this truth force that Gandhiji also spoke about. And so I'll also say, before moving on to my final points, that Archbishop Tutu spoke the truth not just about South Africa. And part of why he's become a figure of world inspiration was not just because of his commitment to nonviolence, but because of his commitment to liberation and freedom and truth for all people. So he was a stalwart fighter for the freedom of political prisoners in the US, including folks he didn't necessarily agree with in every one of their policies. He was a deep decolonization activist, as Gandhiji was, of course, as well. So he fought fearlessly for Palestine and called the Palestine struggle clearly what it was: occupied territory by what was Israeli apartheid, the Israeli version of apartheid. And so he also fought for the people of Western Sahara, of Puerto Rico, and of Kashmir. So all occupations, all occupied people must end if we're going to really live the legacy of Gandhiji. And finally, I'm going to share a quote from another Gandhi, from Ela Gandhi, Gandhi's granddaughter, who contributed an original piece for this book. And Ela wrote, "We should recognize that revolutionary nonviolence is a great strategic ideal. When we talk about revolutionary nonviolence, everyone has said that Gandhiji was a great strategist. But he didn't come up with the idea, for instance, of the Salt March, which was one of his biggest and most impactful nonviolent struggles. He did not just come up with this idea overnight. There was a huge amount of preparation. And part of the preparation was preparing the initial group, the 67 people who started on the march. They were disciplined cadre of the struggle. They were trained first and then moved into the struggle. So my point here, as I come to a close, is that we need to be careful about trying to idealize or mimic some kind of saintliness. We need to train and build for the struggle. And this kind of conversation is absolutely part of that process. And I'll close by the third and final part of my three-part conversation by inviting you to something that I hope will move us further forward. We need more webinars like this one. We need more conversations across disciplines, across generations, across boundaries and borders. And so as I am, in fact, as was noted, the Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association, which a number of you are a part of, and more of you hopefully will join, I want to tell you that we are planning now our next major conference 18 months away. We've got time to raise money and organize and have webinars and have conversations. But hopefully, as our Muslim brothers and sisters say, inshallah, hopefully, God willing, in May of 2023, we'll come together in person and also virtually in Trinidad and Tobago at IPRA's next conference, where we'll bring some principled unity against patriarchy, against colonialism, imperialism, against capitalism, and all oppression. So I'll say this about Trinidad, the location, and about bringing these contexts all together into one. It was in 1932 that the great historian C.L.R. James, who was a Trinidadian writing in the Beacon, noted that Mohandas K. Gandhi was, quote, demonstrating a way that Africa could win its independence from its colonizers, noting also that Gandhi was the greatest figure in world affairs of his day. Later, in 1947, another leading Pan-Africanist, George Padmore, also Trinidadian-born, who went on to become the chief advisor to Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, aka the Gandhi of Africa, noted that the plan for the Fifth Pan-African Congress was, and I quote, based upon the Gandhian tactics of nonviolent non-cooperation. Today, contemporary peace historian Gail Presby has further developed this invisibilized part of Pan-Africanist history, building on the work of Bill Sutherland and others, and noting the vital role of Trinidadian women, including Uriah Butler, Adrienne Cola Riesna, and Elma Francois, in developing active dialogues to pursue a strategy of nonviolent action. It's thus that Pan-African Studies professor Hakeem Mohandis Amani Williams, that's his name, and I know his middle name is not by accident, but Hakeem Mohandis Amani Williams of Trinidad and of the Peace and Justice Studies Association, IPRA's North American branch, will lead IPRA into our next and best global gathering, our 2023 General Conference, to take place in Trinidad in May of next year. It will be truly internationalist, Pan-Africanist, and a Pan-American affair. And while focusing on decolonization, indigeneity, and an end to all oppression, and not on Gandhian studies or learning from Gandhi per se, it will hopefully provide a 21st century space to take our 20th century legacies on to a new level of liberation and freedom. I look forward to that gathering, to the conclusion of this gathering, and to all of the gatherings we have between now and then to come together, to build unity, to speak truth to power, and to fight for the liberation of all people. Thank you so much for the time, and thank you all for the work that we do together. Namaste.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening and inspiring speech. You really urge us to think about the Gandhian philosophy and the concurrent times. I think whoever is sitting here actually felt the same and really being motivated with your thoughts. We are really grateful to you to accept our invitation, and despite of being suffering from Corona, you manage, and we are privileged to hear from you. Thank you so much, sir. We can give 2 minutes to the audience for the question and answer session. If anyone would like to ask anything to Matt, sir. We can see so many good things and thoughts of audience. Okay, thank you. I think the message is very clear. The Professor Matt has cleared with his influential speech, and no doubt so far. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much once again. Now I would like to request Dr. Kakali to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Ruchi. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce the speaker of the day, who not only is fascinated by Gandhian studies, but also practice it. Why? That you will come to know when I read his biodata. He received PhD in religious studies from the University of Toronto in 2010, and MA in religion and culture from Wilfrid Laurier University in 1998. During the year 2011 to 2013, he was an assistant professor in the Department of Religion and Culture at Wilfrid Laurier University. And as I said before, as a strong supporter of Gandhiji, he was not contented with this. He went in search of knowledge further. Currently, he is pursuing masters in university program at Pontifical University in Rome. His research interest is, in one hand, New Testament studies and Christian origins. On the other hand, he is most fascinated by Gandhian studies as well as Christianity and reception of Bible in India, past and present. He received several awards. Some of them are Donald F. Morgensen Award, Frank W. Beer Award, Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada Doctoral Fellowship Award in 2001. He has written several books on religion and education, on Gandhiji, and several other books he has written. Today his topic is Gandhian education for today. So I'm sure all are eagerly waiting to hear him. Dr. Alex Dan, we request you to accept our invitation and we are eagerly waiting for your speech. Sir, you are muted. Sir, you are on mute.
Hello. Dr. Lahiri, thank you so much. Your introduction is too kind, and I really appreciate being able to join you from Toronto in Canada, and I speak to you in with modesty and hope this morning that we, as Professor Meyer said, can join whatever our specific research interests are, whatever our specific backgrounds are, that we can join in a more common effort to align ourselves against all forms of oppression, personal or political, racial or religious. But thanks so much for having me. And in the next 15 minutes, I was hoping just to give a short talk and really make 2 points or say 2 things about Gandhi and education today. May I ask first if I'm audible or people can hear me?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. You're
Okay.
perfectly audible.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, again, thank you. I was hoping just to speak of 2 things this morning. The first being a reminder of Gandhi's overarching aims, his vision for education from kindergarten through post-secondary education and during one's life. My second point is to express some concern, though, that Western education, the education that I live and move in here in Canada, is ironically attenuating, challenging, or even opposing Gandhi's educational vision, and that we need be vigilant for education both in the West and in India if we're mindful of Gandhi. So perhaps I could just take 5 minutes to address a first point with which most of you are familiar, I think, which is to recall Gandhi's aims in education. And at the risk of simplifying, it's fair to say that Gandhi saw education as having, I think, 2 overarching aims or purposes. And everything else in learning tends to fit within these 2 broad purposes. The first aim of all education is to apprehend or to approach truth, to lead us towards truth with a capital T. And bearing in mind that for Gandhi, truth very much is a religious and ethical term. Truth means God. And truth essentially also means a nonviolent way of life in speech and in thought, in the way we relate, the way we eat, the way we talk, the way we work. Truth also, of course, includes honesty, sincerity, investing oneself in one's best efforts. So the whole orientation of education for Gandhi is truth in this sense. I think it's the second aim that Gandhi brings to education, it's a closely related aim, is that in order to apprehend truth, we must first work to learn and to instill in ourselves what Gandhi called Swaraj. So education at the personal level in each of you and I must instill a compassionate and an ethical sense of self-control and of self-sufficiency. That might sound a little clumsy, but I think by Swaraj, what Gandhi means is that we gain a critical intellect, a robust moral sense centered on ahimsa or nonviolent conduct, and an ability to work for ourselves and to look after ourselves in body and in spirit without being reliant upon and so subject to the will of others. So the second orientation of education is to self-control and self-sufficiency. For Gandhi, then, I think education aims overall at an apprehension of truth, of God, and at a facility to self-control, self-reliance, and a nonviolent way of life. And as I say, most of you well understand that. And indeed, I think I'm in august company because the people such as yourself here are those who practice that, who understand that education is not just cramming the memory, but that it is an act of learning to become more nonviolent, to become more sincere, to become more understanding of our oneness with others. Having said that, a sort of first point of what Gandhi regards as education's value. The second point I would like to make, and I was thinking about this week in my own experience, some of it unhappy, working in a university setting and working as a Catholic high school teacher. My second point is a sense of concern or unease that in modern society, including Canada, and more specifically in modern education, there are tendencies working against Gandhi's vision of education. Current education in some ways dispiritingly seems to oppose Gandhi's values of truth, sincerity, and self-sufficiency. I've noticed these and I think suffered through some of these myself. And I was hoping simply to suggest 3 ways, if I may, in which current educational trends are in some ways opposing the values of truth and nonviolence and self-sufficiency. The 3 concerns that I see in education, both primary, secondary, and post-secondary, are advertising, corporatizing, and hyper-digitizing, or appealing ever increasingly to technology. First, the problem of increasing advertisement in education. I have sensed, and particularly at the university level in Canada, an increasing engagement of institutions in advertising who they are, or rather who they say they are, and all of the benefits they can bring to students. But doing so to the point where who they say they are as a university is at variance with who they are. In other words, I find that the increasing presence of competitive advertising on the internet to attract students to university programs, to attract students to secondary programs, to advertise and portray oneself as the ultimate learning experience, is starting to shift the orientation of learning away from truth towards persuasion. In other words, it's not who you are that matters, but who you say you are. And there is a distressing trend I have noticed among school boards and universities to make claims that are so positive and that are so exaggerated about their achievements, about their abilities, about their successes, especially when measured in terms of grants, graduates, research, that people are receiving a false impression of much of the genuine learning that goes on a day-to-day level in the frontline classroom. So that's one concern, one problem, that education is increasingly engaged in not so much towards a presentation of truth or the search for truth, but the self-portrayal of institutions as being the best places to study. A second related problem I sense in education that cuts against Gandhi's vision is, and this is familiar to many of you, I'm sure, an increasing corporatization of education. Education is increasingly basing itself on business models, particularly in the United States and in Canada, in which the search for truth is being displaced, I believe, by many people with an increasing search for profit, often couched in terms like financial sustainability, growth, prosperity, and so on. At a university where I taught, for example, near Toronto, there is a wholehearted dedication to funding and emphasizing those programs which attract either the most research dollars or which attract seemingly the most august faculty. In other words, what will bring the most tuition revenue to the university is a question that I sense being asked, and people aren't willing to say that, to admit that, but there is an increasing reliance on rather artificial gauges of what constitutes success at the university level, including funding, industry applicability, and other gauges of learning that are not necessarily true gauges of learning, of wisdom, of growth, of becoming a gentler, more harmonious world. The benefits of frontline workers and instructors at university are constantly being attenuated and challenged by universities in Canada. Online learning has become a runaway method in which to stack and pack more and more courses and more tuition dollars in courses while not having to pay full-time faculty or use building space for real engagement with real people. So corporatization, the effort, I believe, to save sums of money and to misuse it for personal gain, in short, greed, is attenuating the quality of education in Canada today. The third problem, a specific problem that is jeopardizing and that opposes Gandhi's vision of education, is what I would call the hyper-digitization of schooling. Like you, I have no problem using the internet or keyboards or even cell phones to help facilitate communication across the world. But what worries me is an excessive, runaway fascination with technology, and I'm speaking of Canada here, and that technology must, by definition, provide the best learning solutions, when in fact that's not necessarily true. For example, there's an increasing reliance in the West. In fact, I think some universities will approach a point at which the majority of their undergraduate courses are offered only online. And that means hundreds of students in a class where they never meet their instructor, and the instructor never knows them as people. You cannot teach to the whole person. You cannot even recognize a person in an online course. And we suffer that, and we aren't dealing with that or acknowledging that in Canada. In addition, not only online learning, the pervasive use of electronic books or e-books, profitable for publishers, cheap for libraries, but in my view, insufficient for student learning. Students are not having to flip back and forth and gaze carefully the context on the page of their books. Students are stopping the habit of good note making. Students are cutting and pasting material not in their own words and being encouraged to read faster and faster and faster. After all, ebooks facilitate that. Not only online learning, not only ebooks, but as some of you might know, and as has become an appalling trend in Canada, cell phones have a ubiquitous presence in the classroom, particularly at the secondary level, the high school level, where it often seems, and I can say this from my experience, students spend more time engaging their phone than they do paying attention in class. I don't believe this is a problem in India. I believe the Indian education in so many ways is superior, more disciplined, more truth-oriented than we experience here in Canada. But there is an enormous problem with the use of Wi-Fi networks, attenuating students' ability in classes to do one thing at a time, to listen to one another, to focus on what they're doing, and to avoid the vapid and ephemeral concerns that populate the internet and compete for our attention. I say all this because the problem of hyper-digitizing education is that it cuts against Gandhi's vision of education as a means to self-control, as a means to self-sufficiency. The more students and the more professors appeal to technological devices, the less, I believe, they're engaged in fundamental habits of concentration, self-discipline, unitasking, preventing cheating, making good notes, understanding their sources, recognizing others' contributions, and even a lack of basic penmanship. So, at the risk of sounding as if I'm consumed with frustration, I do wish to emphasize that in the West, and I fear increasingly marketed into Asia, there are educational trends presented as solutions for a busy world which ironically are attenuating, hurting our ability and Gandhi's vision of schools as a means to become more human and more humane, more thoughtful and more slow-paced. And corporatization, advertising, and hyper-digitization are examples of these, to me, distressing trends in Western education. I think by way of conclusion, and forgive me if I've rambled or spoken too long, but by way of conclusion, if we know Gandhi's vision of education, if we know something about Gandhi generally, that nonviolence matters, that sincerity matters, that truth matters, then you and I, as educators, need to be vigilant. We need to imbibe, we need to uphold, we need to celebrate education with its orientation towards truth, with its orientation to making us gentler people, more thoughtful, empathetic, understanding, listening, nonviolent people. And we must be careful not to let education run away under corporate, technological, and other influences whose interests are different, whose aims are different. So I would call in conclusion for a judicious appeal to technology, a judicious appeal to finance, but to let Gandhi's vision of education as a search for truth, a search for God, a search for gentleness, be our center of gravity, to be our orientation throughout schooling. Again, perhaps I've spoken too long, but I'll stop and express my gratitude to be able to share the modest thoughts of an individual in the front lines of a classroom in Canada.
Thank you very much, sir. Now the session is open for questionnaires. If anybody has any questions, you can ask, you can express.
Just an observation, Dr. Alex. I'm Neeta here. Well, during the pandemic, even in India, we are observing students going towards the mobile culture more and more. So that's a very big problem, social problem with parents. That's an observation.
Neeta, I agree with you, and I find that what frustrates me, and probably what frustrates some of you as parents, or just observers, children, is that technology is so often presented as a kind of glib solution. It lets us do more. It saves us time. And other such catchphrases, which aren't necessarily true at all, but which are shot at us so often through so many commercial means that we come to assume, well, technology has this invariable, inevitable role. It's coming. It's improving us. And I would say, and as you indicated wisely, Neeta, that's not necessarily the case. And if we do nothing else at the university level, let us think critically about where technology is useful,
Yes.
but also where it's not.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Alex Dam. We are for throwing some light on two major Gandhian vision in education and its importance. One,
Madam, Excuse me, madam. I think someone has raised hand. for
Okay,
query.
yes. Okay, yeah. Shalin, you want to ask something?
Yeah, ma'am. As ma'am mentioned that technology, it can be bad, I agree. But at the same time, online, the way sir had mentioned about corporatization, online education is actually doing the opposite of it. Because when we go online, we have so many free resources through which we learn so much. Maybe this can be the key to stopping universities from getting corporatized entirely. That is what I feel, because when you go online, you have so many courses in so many subjects that train you so well, and the educators over there, it's easier for them to keep updating their resources, and their resources are very much updated as per the time and need. So that's why getting online, like, yeah, it's true. Being on the phone all the time is not good. That I absolutely 100% agree with. But at the same time, if you're spending your time on your phone doing these courses or learning, using it for the right means, I think it can be a great tool.
Shalon, I just want to say thank you very much for that wise comment, because I think you're quite right, and I don't and I shouldn't, and I fear that in some ways I would sound discouraging towards the use of internet or online learning as a whole. As you say rightly, Shalon, there are forms of online learning that have great reach to people who otherwise wouldn't have access. There are online resources which actually circumvent the expenses with which other companies, publishing companies, and other corporations would levy upon us. I would simply say this, that I hope that in the course of our learning, even online learning, we can somehow moderate our so-called screen time, because the very act of using the screen, the very act of using the phone, at some level suits perfectly the entire high-tech industry.
Yes, sir. I completely agree with you.
Can attenuate sometimes our willingness to communicate in person-to-person ways. So perhaps striking a balance, I think, as you're suggesting, between using the technology constructively while preserving our ability to talk person to person, to talk meaningfully, is a balance we need to strike. Human communication and judicious use of technology. But thanks for that.
Yeah, anyone else?
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, am I audible?
Yeah. Omkar.
Good morning, sir. I'm Omkar, Dr. Neeta's son, and I just wish to add that technology, though a very convenient asset according to me, which can bridge all sorts of geographical and financial barriers, is not a substitute for the efforts that we all must invest for any kind of personal and professional growth. I mean, it's the people often think of technology as something that spares them the effort of having to learn something or just make the life more convenient. And I think that this expectation of these expectations from technology to be a solution to everything are misguided, because even though it might bring us the resources more conveniently, we still need to undergo all of the efforts and face all the challenges necessary in order to learn and grow in any aspect of life. So that's just my opinion.
Omkar, thanks very much for that wise thought. And if I could paraphrase you and what I sense you saying, and what I need to remember too, what I tell students, in fact, is remember you're in control of the computer. Don't let the computer control you, which is a silly maxim in some ways, but which I think gets to your point that there is no substitute for sincerity. There is no substitute for effort. And there is no substitute for the benefits we gain when we speak directly to one another.
Yes, anyone else? Yeah, I thank you, sir, very much from the core of my heart for throwing some light on firstly on the two major Gandhian vision in education and its importance. Firstly, the approach towards truth. Truth is not only honesty, but it is truth also means non-violence. Truth also means God, and many other meaning it has. Secondly, you have thrown light on the ethical means of self-control and self-sufficiency. And then you have come to the compared with the Gandhian way of looking at education with the present scenario. And it's indeed very sad that the development of with the development of technology, the education is sometimes deviating from actually its true charm of education. It's going actually. Yeah, imagine the young toddlers who used to go to the young kids who used to love going to the school, interacting with with their friends, interacting. Mainly, they used to like the tiffin. I think the tiffin period. They used to have a sleeping period. So many things they used to like it, but they are deviated from all these things with the development of technology. So it's really very sad. This I think we all as a teacher is really agree with what you want to convey to us. Technological development is definitely required, but I think we should understand that that with this development, there is lot of other things. There are a lot of other things which we are missing. Our kids are missing, and so I think there will be some abrupt change. I hope we all live with hope. So all will understand the demerits of technology, and we will come up with a hybrid system where we will not only be we will be making use of the technology, and at the same time we will be using Gandhian philosophy also. We will be keeping in mind Gandhian philosophy also. And I think that hybrid system is the only solution to it, I feel. Because the technology, we have to make use of it also. We can't stop the development of technology. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation and talking on such a genuine topic and genuine important topic, which is a common problem of today's student. It's really a very pathetic situation which today's student is really facing. Only the rich ones who are having lot of money are taking advantage of the technology. But what about others? Country like India and some other poor country where there is where they are technology, they can't afford to get a good technology. Then what about them? Why will they be prevented from education? Why will they be prevented from getting education? They have the right to get education. So we are stopping them from getting education. So really, sir, your speech has really touched us, sir. and we should come up with some solution to it, so that education is for all. It's not for only few people, it is for all. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now, yes, sir. Thank you. Now I request Dr. Saloni to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kakali. A small announcement. Feedback link is posted in chat box. Every participant requested to please fill the feedback form. And may I request everyone to turn on their cameras for a group shot? That would be a memory to be treasured. Everyone, please turn on your camera. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. A very good evening to our most valued invited guests, speakers of the session, and all participants. It's my privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Saloni Bhushan, from Department of Computer Science, V.K. Krishna Menon College, Pandu, Mumbai, on behalf of my crew members, first of all, spread my most sincere thanks to the Almighty God for making today's event a grand success. On this occasion, I must mention my deep sense of gratitude to our respected founder chairman, late Advocate Sri B. M. Menon sir. With his blessings and grace, we are able to carry out our duties to the best of our ability. I take this opportunity to thank our management, Bhandup Education Society, under the dynamic leadership of our chairperson, Mrs. Sarada Menon Madam. Thank you, Madam, for your motivation, encouragement, and for being such a great support. A special mention to our venerable principal, Mrs. Saroj Fadnis Madam, for being the catalyst that inspires us to do our best. I, on behalf of organizing team, would like to express our sincere thanks to our speakers connected from across the globe, Dr. Avkash Jadhav, Dr. Vidya Jain, Dr. Neeta Khandepkar, Dr. Bernedette Muthien, Dr. Namita Nimbalkar, Mr. Matt Mayer, Mr. Alex Dam, for accepting our invitation and for giving excellent coverage to the theme of the session. I thank all the participants who have attended this program virtually for their patient hearing and thereby contributing to the success of the program. Lastly, I thank our loving teachers, non-teaching staff, including our technical team, for their untiring efforts. We have been fortunate enough to be supported by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues. On behalf of my crew, I once again thank you all for being with us. Thank you very much. Now I request everyone to please raise on their place for national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे रहे।
Thank you.
With your permission, ma'am, shall we end the meeting, Jadhav? Thank you so much once again. Thank you. Thank you, Principal ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you very much for sparing time. And now I formally end the meeting now. Thank you.